Chapter 3041. The great battle. Zhuan remembered that when Zhongli Haoyan had first arrived at the Door of Darkness, she had addressed this elder as Elder Zhong. Zhuan couldn't help but sigh at the heavenly temple's foundation. With a single glance, he could tell that Elder Zhong wasn't the temple master of the heavenly temple. Instead, he was here to act as Zhongli Haoyan's bodyguard. Since he was also an early-stage transcending heaven master, didn't that mean that the heavenly temple had more than one transcending heaven master powerhouse? It seemed that the heavenly temple's reputation as the #1 Dao Palace faction in the Xianmi Sky Domain wasn't undeserved. The other Dao Palace factions paled in comparison. At the very least, Zhuan had seen many Dao Palace factions, and most of them only had one early-stage transcending heaven master powerhouse. Moreover, the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect had never had a transcending heaven master powerhouse before. If Senki Yin hadn't been lucky enough to break through, the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect would have been at the bottom of the Dao Palace factions. At this moment, Senki Yin, Xiang Puyu, and Shaojin had joined forces and were fighting against a figure whose entire body was covered in blazing flames. What surprised Zhuan was that the 3 early-stage, transcending heaven masters, Senki Yin and Xiang Puyu, weren't able to gain the upper hand in a 3-on-1 battle. On the contrary, Senki Yin and the other two were at a disadvantage. That burning figure was too terrifying. Every move he made seemed to contain the power to destroy the heavens and earth. Zhuan naturally saw the true face of that burning figure. It was the second elder of the Phoenix people. Zhuan's gaze became extremely solemn. This second elder of the Phoenix people was also an early-stage, transcending heaven master, but he wasn't far from the mid-stage. Moreover, this old fellow's bloodline was very powerful. The blood of the Phoenix flowed through his veins. Although he couldn't compare to the Phoenix people's holy maiden, he was already a high-level existence among the Phoenix people. Relying on his cultivation realm and bloodline, this second elder's strength far exceeded that of an early-stage, transcending heaven master. This was also the final reason why Senki Yin and the other two were still at a disadvantage when fighting against the two elders. On the other side of the battlefield was the battle between Elder Zhong of the Heavenly Temple and a mermaid. This merman was abnormally tall, much taller than Sauron and Moses. Just his height alone was at least 10 feet. Furthermore, this merman's entire body was covered with ferocious spikes. As these spikes danced, they emitted a chilling light that could shake one's soul. Zhuan could sense that this merman's aura was far stronger than MDA's. He was actually also an early-stage heavenly master expert. Zhuan noticed MDA not far away. When he looked at the merman, his eyes were filled with respect and fanaticism. He knew that this merman was most likely in existence on the level of the merman race's patriarch. Before entering the Door of Darkness, Zhuan did not see the mermaid. Clearly, the mermaid had come after they entered the Door of Darkness. On the other side, there were only 2 early-stage heavenly master experts, but they were enough to match the 4 early-stage heavenly master experts of the human race. In addition to the high-level battle between these two sides, the human race and the other race were also fighting. Although the human race outnumbered the other race, the human race was being suppressed by the other race. After all, the other race's overall quality was much stronger than that of the human race. In the same realm, the other race could fight 3 people at once. Unless the human race outnumbered the other race by 3 times, the result was destined to be defeated. Zhuan's eyes flickered. He was hesitating whether to make a move at this moment. Speaking of which, his purpose in returning to the Door of Darkness was to take away his 2 good friends, Jiang Qixing and Yao Xiangjuan. As for Zhongli Haoyan, she had an early-stage heavenly master expert as her bodyguard, so Zhuan was not worried about her safety. If he made a move now, he would expose his identity. At that time, it would not be so easy to take away Jiang Qixing and Yao Xiangjuan. Just as Zhuan was hesitating, ripples appeared on the surface of the Door of Darkness, which had been motionless all this time. Immediately, more than a dozen figures appeared from the ripples. Leading them were 2 young men. Zhuan was not unfamiliar with these 2 young men. They were Yi Qidong and Situ Liangji, who had watched with folded arms at the sorcerer god's altar. Zhuowen did not have a good impression of the two of them, but he did not have any bad feelings either. Although the two of them had maintained a neutral attitude when Zhuowen had faced the holy maiden of the Phoenix people, Zhuowen knew that most people would have made the same choice as Yi Qidong and Situ Liangji. After all, he was not familiar with the two of them. He did not have the charisma to take the initiative to make others sacrifice their lives for him. However, Zhongli Hao Yin was an exception. Just because he had given her his essence blood, she was willing to sacrifice her life to repay his kindness. This made Zhuowen have a good impression of her. The moment Yi Qidong, Situ Liangji, and the others appeared at the entrance of the Door of Darkness, they immediately saw the scene of the battle at the entrance and could not help but be stunned. Yi Qidong, Situ Liangji, quickly returned to the team and helped the team repel the foreign races. Senki-yin immediately noticed Yi Qidong and the others and hurriedly transmitted his voice to Yi Qidong and Situ Liangji. The two of them quickly realized that Lin Ming had broken off the relationship between the human race and the foreign races. Now, they had to join the battle and repel the foreign races. Otherwise, they would have no way to survive. The cultivators sent into the Door of Darkness were not weak. On the contrary, their strength and talent far surpassed their peers. Therefore, after receiving Senki-yin's transmission, they immediately joined the team of the human race that was still fighting and helped the human race resist the foreign races. The Scarlet Mountain Villa behind Yi Qidong was the #1 Dao Palace faction in the host region. The master of the Scarlet Mountain Villa was also an early-stage sky-reaching master. However, he did not come to the Door of Darkness this time and only sent a creation master to protect Yi Qidong. There were still many people like Yi Qidong on the human race's side. As the leaders of Dao Palace factions, they were usually busy cultivating in seclusion or dealing with other important matters and had very little time to spare. Although the matter of ancestral Shaman Gonggong this time was important, it was not to the extent that these Dao Palace bigwigs would go crazy. Therefore, only the 10 Extremities Yin Corpse Sect, Yin and Yang Divine Sect, and Scarlet Heaven Sword Tower had personally come. The rest of the Dao Palace faction leaders had sent other experts to accompany their geniuses. With the addition of Yi Qidong and the others, the human race's decline immediately slowed down a lot. However, the foreign races still had the advantage, but the human race was not suppressed like before. In the space-time tunnel, Zhuowen silently observed and saw that Yao Xiangjuan and Jiang Qixing had not come out. He also did not make any moves. Speaking of which, he had not come to the Door of Darkness to take Jiang Qixing and Yao Xiangjuan away. His main purpose was to confirm whether they could return safely. If he confirmed that they were safe, Zhuowen naturally did not plan to appear. Chapter 3042. Unrelenting after waiting for a while, another ripple appeared from the Door of Darkness, and 3 figures appeared. Zhuowen's eyes lit up when he saw the 3 figures. They were the people he was waiting for: Yao Xiangjuan, Jiang Qixing, and Zhongli Haoyan. Zhongli Haoyan's face was still pale, but her aura was much more stable than before. Her injuries should have improved. After all, Zhongli Haoyan was the strongest prodigy of the Heavenly Sacred Temple. She should have no lack of top-grade divine pills on her. Her injuries had probably healed so quickly because she had consumed a top-grade divine pill. However, Zhongli Haoyan and Yao Xiangjuan didn't look too good, and they were a little anxious. After appearing in the Door of Darkness, they immediately took out their flying divine artifacts and fled. The humans were all pleasantly surprised when they saw Zhongli Haoyan come out. Among them, Elder Zhong, who was engaged in a fierce battle with the merman, finally relaxed his frown. But soon, his expression changed slightly because he noticed the strange expression on Zhongli Haoyan's face. Sure enough, he took out his flying divine artifact and fled the moment he saw Zhongli Haoyan come out. Unfortunately, as soon as the flying divine artifact flew out, a huge flaming hand suddenly shot out from the Door of Darkness. The flaming hand grabbed the tail of Zhongli Haoyan's flying divine artifact in its hand. The flying divine artifact's forward momentum was immediately stopped. Sizzle, sizzle. The blazing flames on the flaming hand surged, and the scorching heat started to melt Zhongli Haoyan's flying divine artifact. An incredulous look appeared on Zhongli Haoyan's face. Her flying divine tool wasn't of a particularly high grade, but it was still a god of creation stage flying divine tool. There were many spell formations and restrictions within it, and it had been refined from many precious materials, so it was extraordinarily sturdy. But now, the flying divine artifact couldn't withstand the heat of the flaming hand and started to melt. It was unbelievable. Do you really think you can escape? A proud female voice sounded from inside the door of darkness. The door of darkness rippled violently again, and the Phoenix People's Holy Maiden appeared at the entrance of the door of darkness with more than 10 alien races. The Phoenix People's Holy Maiden stared coldly at Zhongli Haoyan in the air. She grabbed at the air with her right hand, and the flaming hand started to pull. Crack! The flying divine artifact instantly shattered into countless flaming fragments. Zhongli Haoyan's eyes narrowed. She gritted her teeth and took out a golden talisman. The golden rune engraved on the golden talisman burst out with a blazing golden light. Immediately, it turned into a golden stream of light. It was like a golden river hanging high in the sky. It flowed against the current and blocked the giant flaming hand behind it. Bam, 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 bam. I told you that you can't escape. The Phoenix People's Holy Maiden wasn't particularly surprised that the flaming hand was blocked. Golden flames started to dance in her beautiful eyes. The flaming hand had changed completely. It had turned from a scarlet red to a golden color. Its power had also skyrocketed in an instant, suppressing the golden river in one fell swoop. The golden river was torn apart, and the flaming hand swept out as if it had teleported. It instantly closed in on Zhongli Haoyan and the others. The flaming hand was too terrifying. If the three of them were to be hit by it, they would be severely injured even if they didn't die. Zhongli Haoyan and the others' expressions changed drastically. They knew that they could only take it head-on. The flaming hand was too fast, and it was too late to dodge. The two of you run. I'll stop the Phoenix People's Holy Maiden. As long as you return to the human team, the Phoenix People's Holy Maiden won't dare to charge into the human team alone. Zhongli Haoyan pushed Yao Xiangjuan and Jiang Qixing, who were still in shock, toward the human team. She then turned around with a determined look in her beautiful eyes. Hee, you're courting death. You were my match when you weren't injured. Now that you're injured, do you think you'll be my match? You're overestimating yourself. The Phoenix People's Holy Maiden sneered coldly. She glanced at the dozen or so aliens behind her. The aliens understood the meaning of the Phoenix People's Holy Maiden's gaze. They nodded and rushed out. Their targets were Jiang Qixing and Yao Xiangjuan, who were pushed away by Zhongli Haoyan. Zhongli Haoyan also realized the Phoenix People's Holy Maiden's intention. Her expression changed slightly, and she planned to return to block the aliens. Unfortunately, the terrifying golden flaming hand had already arrived in front of her. The temperature was so high that it seemed as if even the space around it would evaporate. Zhongli Haoyan could only face it seriously. Otherwise, she might die at the hands of the flaming hand. Zhongli Haoyan took out several talismans of different colors. They formed several different colored barriers in front of her. They barely blocked the flaming hand. However, looking at Zhongli Haoyan's tottering body, it seemed that she was barely able to block it. She probably wouldn't be able to block it for long. Holy Maiden, your strength isn't as strong as before. Hee, your injuries are more serious than mine, aren't they? If Brother Long hadn't shown mercy at the last moment, would you still be alive? Zhongli Haoyan mocked. The Phoenix People's Holy Maiden's beautiful eyes were filled with killing intent. She looked coldly at Zhongli Haoyan as if someone had caught her sore spot. She said coldly, "It seems like you're really courting death." As she spoke, the Phoenix People's Holy Maiden formed a seal with her jade-like hands. Suddenly, the flaming hand became even more terrifying. Its flames were ferocious, and the temperature became even more terrifying. To the Holy Maiden, the battle with Long One was an unerasable humiliation. Although she was very curious as to why Long One was distracted at the last moment, she still trembled with fear when she thought of that battle. That time, she really felt that she was in a life-threatening danger. Zhongli Hao Yin immediately felt the pressure. Her pure white forehead was covered with fine sweat. Not far away, Yao Xiangjuan and Jiang Qixing were blocked by more than a dozen foreign races, blocking their way. These foreign races were all very strong. Yao Xiangjuan and Jiang Qixing were instantly at a disadvantage when they worked together. They were tottering as if they would be defeated at any time. Young Miss, Old Zhong, who was originally entangled with the leader of the Merfolk tribe, saw that Zhongli Hao Yin was on the verge of collapsing under the giant golden flaming hand. His expression changed slightly as he pushed the leader of the Merfolk tribe back with a palm strike. Then, he rushed towards Zhongli Hao Yin in an attempt to rescue her. Higi, you want to leave? It won't be that easy. Chapter 3043. Explosive Enlightenment Divine. Pill the wind from the fist whistled and arrived in front of Elder Zhong in an instant. Elder Zhong's expression changed slightly. His gaze was gloomy as he struck out with his right palm. It collided violently with the leader of the Merfolk clan. Terrifying ripples spread out, shattering the surrounding space into dust. Get lost! Elder Zhong roared angrily. Unfortunately, the merman leader smiled and did not have the slightest intention of leaving. Old man, if you want me to get lost, then defeat me. You haven't even defeated me, yet you're telling me this. Don't you think it's funny? The merman leader sneered. Elder Zhong was silent, but the killing intent in his eyes was shocking and even terrifying. You're the one who forced me to do this. Elder Zhong took out a scarlet divine pill and swallowed it. Immediately, a bloody mist erupted from Elder Zhong's body. Streaks of blood appeared on the surface of Elder Zhong's skin. His aura suddenly became extremely terrifying, many times stronger than before. Elder Zhong's shriveled face was now covered with streaks of blood. He looked very ferocious and terrifying, like a murderous demon that had come out from a pile of corpses. The merman leader's expression changed drastically. He stared at Elder Zhong, who had undergone a tremendous transformation. He could not help but step back and put some distance between himself and Elder Zhong. He looked at the latter in fear. What kind of divine pill did this old man take? His aura is too terrifying. He's almost at the peak of the early stage of Heaven Ascension Master. I'm afraid he's not far from the middle stage of Heaven Ascension Master. The merman leader's expression did not look good. He looked at Elder Zhong with vigilance. He could feel the latter's strong sense of danger. Elder Zhong's sudden burst of terrifying aura immediately attracted the attention of the surrounding humans and foreign races. In particular, Senki Yin, Xiang Puyu, and Xiao Jin, and the two elders of the Phoenix people were also attracted by Elder Zhong's battle. This old man took the explosive enlightenment divine pill. What a crazy old man. Senki Yin's eyes flickered. Xiang Puyu and Xiao Jin also looked serious. They naturally knew about the explosive enlightenment divine pill. It was a fortune-grade divine pill. Its only use was to stimulate the potential in a cultivator's body, instantly erupting with more power. However, the duration of this burst-awakening divine pill was not long, and the side effects were huge. Because after using this explosive awakening elixir, one's cultivation level would drop. Elder Zhong was an early master of Heaven Ascension, but after taking the explosive awakening divine pill, he would gain unprecedented power, but at the same time, his cultivation level would drop from the early master of Heaven Ascension. Die for this old man. Elder Zhong was like an awakened lion. He took a step forward, causing the air to explode and space to distort. He disappeared from where he stood as if he had teleported. When Elder Zhong appeared again, he was already in front of the Merfolk leader. His right hand formed a palm and pressed against the Merfolk leader's chest as if he had teleported. So fast, this was the only thought in the merman leader's mind. He only had time to cross his arms in front of his chest before the palm came crashing down. Kacha! The merman leader's eyes widened. His arms seemed to have been broken by a huge force. His body flew out involuntarily like a falling leaf, lonely and helpless. Whoosh! Before the merfolk leader could react from his melancholy, Elder Jean's figure appeared in front of him again. Elder Jean was expressionless. He lifted his right leg and smashed it down, hitting the merfolk leader's chest. The merfolk leader spat out a mouthful of blood and fell from the sky, crashing onto the ground. The entire ground shook. After Elder Jean did this, he did not care about the merfolk leader who had been smashed to the ground by him. He took a step forward and rushed toward Zhongli Haoyan. At this moment, the barrier created by Zhongli Haoyan began to crack. It was on the verge of collapsing, as if it would shatter at any moment. Zhongli Haoyan's face was pale, and her delicate body was trembling. She probably could not hold on for much longer. Zhongli Haoyan naturally saw the battle on Elder Zhong's side. When Elder Zhong rushed over, she was pleasantly surprised. Elder Zhong, help me save my friends first. Come and save me later. Zhongli Haoyan hurriedly pointed at Yao Xiangjuan and Jiang Qixing as she transmitted her voice to Elder Zhong. Elder Zhong was startled, but he immediately shook his head and rushed toward Zhongli Haoyan. He directly passed by Jiang Qixing and Yao Xiangjuan, who were still struggling and could be taken down by the foreign races at any time. Zhongli Haoyan's beautiful eyes showed a trace of hatred. She hurriedly transmitted her voice again. Elder Zhong, it's easy for you to save them. Elder Zhong sighed and shook his head. Miss, it's too late. If I save them, you may die. I will not allow this to happen. Elder Zhong's eyes were clear. He instantly rushed in front of Zhongli Haoyan. With a wave of his sleeve, the terrifying golden flame hand instantly dissipated. The Phoenix People's Saintess groaned. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Her pretty face was slightly pale as she stared at Elder Zhong. Saintess die. Elder Zhong stood in front of Zhongli Haoyan and blasted his skinny palm toward the Phoenix People's Saintess. Elder Zhong's palm was too terrifying. It surpassed the strength of an early-stage, sky-reaching master. Even if the Phoenix People's Saintess were at her peak, she would not be able to block it. She would probably die on the spot. Not far away, the Phoenix People's second elder naturally saw this scene. He frowned and reminded, Saintess, retreat. The Phoenix People's Saintess was rather calm. She waved her hand and produced a fiery red escape talisman. Crushing the escape talisman, the Saintess of the Phoenix clan turned into an illusory spark and disappeared from where she was, drifting away. Elder Zhong frowned slightly. His palm had hit nothing. The escape talisman that the Phoenix People's Saintess had produced was very advanced. It turned into an illusory spark, and he could not even catch a trace of its aura. The moment Elder Zhong rescued Zhongli Haoyan and attacked the Phoenix People's Saintess, Jiang Qixing and Yao Xiangjuan were surrounded by more than 10 aliens, could not hold on any longer. They both vomited mouthfuls of blood and became extremely weak. It's over. Looking at the aliens surrounding them and attacking them, Yao Xiangjuan and Jiang Qixing's hearts were filled with despair. They knew that they would not be able to escape this time. There was no doubt that they would die. Deep in the space-time tunnel, Zhuowen saw this scene and sighed softly. He had thought that Elder Zhong would save Yao Xiangjuan and Jiang Qixing. Unfortunately, he had thought too much. Zhuowen naturally would not watch Yao Xiangjuan and Jiang Qixing die in front of him. He took out the Ho-E Divine Bow and a Genesis Divine Arrow and poured a large portion of his energy into it. Chapter 3044. The Merman tribe leader was in a sorry state. Zhuowen left a trace of his divine sense in the divine arrow. Soon after, he loosened his grip on the feather. Whoosh! The sound of the arrow tearing through the air rang out, as if an earth-shattering bolt of lightning had descended from the heavens. The sound was very sharp and deafening. The divine arrow was too fast and carried with it a strong killing intent. It shot out of the space-time tunnel and headed toward the group of foreign races where Yao Xiangjuan and Jiang Qixing were. Puff, 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 puff. the divine arrow pierced through 3 foreign races in an instant. The 3 foreign races didn't even make a sound before they exploded into clouds of blood mist. They couldn't be more dead. After killing the 3 foreign races in an instant, the divine arrow seemed to have a mind of its own as it suddenly turned around and shot toward the other foreign races around it. In just a few breaths' time, 9 foreign races had died to the divine arrow. The remaining 4 or 5 foreign races all looked terrified. They no longer cared about Yao Xiangjuan and Jiang Qixing and fled in panic. Unfortunately, the divine arrow didn't show any signs of letting them go. It suddenly turned around and pierced through the remaining foreign races' foreheads in an instant. After killing that foreign being, the divine arrow slowly landed beside Yao Xiangjuan and Jiang Qixing. The killing intent around it was completely restrained, and it looked like an ordinary divine arrow of the Genesis stage. This scene was naturally seen by everyone present. However, the majority of the people revealed bewildered expressions because they discovered that the divine arrow that was filled with killing intent had come from an unknown place. It was as if it had appeared out of thin air. Yao Xiangjuan and Jiang Qixing were pleasantly surprised. They were all too familiar with the divine arrow and the strong killing intent it carried. It's Brother Long. Their eyes were filled with surprise. They didn't expect Long when to still be alive. Zhongli Haoyin followed beside Elder Zhong. Her beautiful eyes were filled with guilt when she saw that Jiang Qixing and Yao Xiangjuan were about to die under the foreign race's encirclement. However, when the divine arrow flew through the air, her beautiful eyes revealed a look of joy. However, there was some doubt in her heart. Who exactly was the owner of this divine arrow? Speaking of which, Zhongli Haoyin had only met Zhuowen a few times, and she had only seen Zhuowen fight twice, which was when Zhuowen fought against Moses and the Phoenix people Sanus. In those 2 battles, Zhuowen didn't use the Ho-E sacred bow or the divine arrow, so Zhongli Haoyin didn't know that the divine arrow that was filled with killing intent was Zhuowen's doing. The saintess of the Phoenix people, who had already flown into the ranks of the foreign races, had a puzzled look in her eyes. At the same time, she was also a little angry that someone had ruined her plans. Her understanding of Zhuowen was about the same as Zhongli and Haoyin, and it was limited to the battle at the sorcerer god's altar. Similarly, she had never seen the trump card of the Ho-E divine bow. Although most of the people were puzzled by the sudden appearance of the divine arrow, there was one person in the ranks of the human race whose eyes were shining with a sinister light. This was an old man who looked to be in his 60s. He was wearing a dark red robe, and although his face was wrinkled, his eyes were bright and full of vigor. He had a majestic aura that was difficult to look at. If Zhuowen saw this old man, he would definitely recognize him. This old man was the great elder of the 10 ultimate in-corpse sect, Gao Yanghong. He was a great expert in the 10 ultimate in-corpse sect, second only to Senki Yin. The aura of this divine arrow is too similar. Zhuowen must be nearby. Gao Yanghong squinted his eyes and looked around the void. He quickly locked onto a direction. Although he didn't find the exact location of the divine arrow's owner, he had a clear direction. As long as he broke through the void, he would be able to find the exact location of the divine arrow's owner. However, Gao Yanghong was very cautious. He quietly hid in the ranks of the human race and cooperated with them to resist the foreign race. He tried his best not to show any abnormalities in his expression, but his heart was very excited. When Zhuowen had broken into the secret underground chamber of the sect, he had sent Ba Jingwei, Gu Hongkai, and Mao Xinho into the secret underground chamber to kill Zhuowen. Unfortunately, the 3 elders had died in the secret underground chamber. In the end, Zhuowen had shot a terrifying arrow and destroyed the passage to the secret underground chamber. Gao Yanghong had even used all his skills to block that terrifying arrow. The killing intent and aura of this divine arrow that had suddenly appeared from the void was too similar to the arrow that Zhuowen had shot in the secret underground chamber. To be more precise, it was almost exactly the same. Gao Yanghong was very excited. He knew very well that Zhuowen had hidden too many treasures on him. Among them, he knew that the transcending heaven-level divine artifact, the Yama's ghost diagram, had been hidden in the depths of the secret underground chamber by Senki Yin, the sectmaster of the Yin Corp's sect. It had been stolen by Zhuowen. In addition to the Yama's ghost diagram, the terrifying divine arrow that Zhuowen had shot was also a valuable treasure. As long as he could catch Zhuowen, Gao Yanghong knew that he would definitely be rich. In the space-time tunnel, Zhuowen could feel the divine senses that were probing in his direction. He couldn't help but feel a little helpless. The arrow that he had shot was very secretive. It would not be easy for cultivators below the transcending heaven level to detect his location. However, it was impossible for the transcending heaven level experts, who were engaged in a decisive battle, not to mention that their divine senses were extremely powerful. If Zhuowen had done nothing in the space-time tunnel but secretly observed, no one would have detected his existence. However, after he had shot that arrow, he had immediately exposed his location. However, Zhuowen was not worried. The only ones who could pose a threat to him now were the transcending heaven-level experts. As for cultivators below the transcending heaven level, they could not threaten his life at all. After shooting that arrow, Zhuowen did not shoot a second arrow. Instead, he secretly quieted down. Yao Xiangjuan belonged to the Yin and Yang divine sect, while Jiang Qixing was a disciple of the sun-chasing temple. Among the human race, there were still their elders and fellow disciples. After Yao Xiangjuan and Jiang Qixing were rescued by the divine arrow, the two of them returned to their respective teams under the instructions of the experts of their respective forces. The human race and the alien race, who had stopped fighting because of the arrow, began fighting again. The battle was getting more and more intense, and the casualties on both sides were increasing. Bang! Suddenly, there was a loud roar. On the ground not far away, a figure suddenly broke out of the ground. The place where the figure broke out of the ground was a huge pit. Everyone looked over and found that this person was the merman leader who had been brutally beaten by Elder Zhong. At this moment, the merman leader was in a rather sorry state. Her scaly face was slightly pale, and the aura on her body was somewhat weak. She was panting heavily. Chapter 3045. Resolute Elder Zhong, Old Man. The side effects of the explosive enlightenment pill are very terrifying. Your aura has already begun to weaken. Since you didn't kill me in one breath just now, you have to die now? The merman leader stomped his right foot and turned into an afterimage as he rushed towards Elder Zhong. It had to be said that this merman leader was very sinister. He knew that he was no match for Elder Zhong, who had consumed the explosive enlightenment pill. When Elder Zhong hurriedly went to save Zhong Li Haoyin, this fellow had been hiding in the huge pit, pretending to be dead, waiting for the effects of the explosive enlightenment pill on Elder Zhong's body to pass. Elder Zhong, be careful. Zhong Li and Haoyin naturally noticed the leader of the merfolk race rushing over and hurriedly warned. Young miss, don't worry. This old man's life is very tough. You rest here first. Also, you must take good care of the possession talisman that the Lord gave you before he left. That thing can protect you during critical moments. After Elder Zhong finished speaking, he stomped his right foot on the air, causing the entire space to tremble violently as he disappeared on the spot. Bang! 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 Immediately, Elder Zhong blocked the incoming merman leader in midair. The two of them engaged in a fierce battle, causing terrifying shockwaves to sweep out. Poochie! The two of them fought for less than an hour before the merman leader seized the opportunity to punch Elder Zhong in the chest. Elder Zhong spat out a mouthful of blood as he continuously retreated in the air. Zhong Li Haoyin cried out in worry. She could clearly see that Elder Zhong's entire body was trembling. His palms were sweating profusely, and the aura on his body had become very chaotic. Zhong Li Haoyin knew that the side effects of the explosive enlightenment pill were beginning to show. She knew very well how great the side effects of the explosive enlightenment pill were. It was already very impressive that Elder Zhong could endure the side effects of the explosive enlightenment pill and persist in fighting the merman leader. The leader of the merfolk race had also suffered heavy injuries, but compared to Elder Zhong, it was not even worth mentioning. Die, you old bastard. The merman leader did not plan to give Elder Zhong a chance to catch his breath. He planned to end the battle quickly. He could tell that Elder Zhong was already an arrow at the end of its flight. This old man had been resisting the backlash for the side effects of the burst enlightenment divine pill, and now that he was severely injured by Yang Kai's punch, he might not be able to suppress the backlash that was about to come. There was no fear in Elder Zhong's eyes. He stared coldly at the leader of the mermaids and took a deep breath. His eyes were filled with determination. Waves of blood chi erupted from his body. His blood seemed to be burning at this moment, evaporating into a bloody mist that obscured his vision. Elder Zhong, no. You die if you do this. Zhongli Haoyan's beautiful eyes narrowed as she revealed a sorrowful expression. She knew that Elder Zhong was burning his blood essence. Old man, aren't you afraid of death? When the leader of the mermen saw that Elder Zhong was burning his blood essence, her eyes could not help but shrink. She looked at Elder Zhong as if he was crazy. He was very clear that after using the burst enlightenment divine pill and being heavily injured by him, this old fellow was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Now, he was actually burning his blood essence. He really didn't want to live anymore. It's enough to have you accompany me to the grave. Elder Zhong glanced at the leader of the merman race indifferently. Then, he turned back to look at Zhongli Haoyan and sighed. Young miss, this old man has failed to live up to the expectations of the Hallmaster. I'm afraid I can't accompany you out of the door of darkness. Zhongli Haoyan was already weeping at this moment. Logically speaking, it was very difficult for an expert of the Master of Heaven to die. With Elder Zhong's current state, if he insisted on leaving this place, the leader of the merman race would not be able to catch up. However, Elder Zhong knew that if he escaped, the battle between the Master of Heaven of the human race and the foreign race would tilt. At that time, the leader of the merman race would definitely join the team of the second elder of the Phoenix people. Right now, Senki In and the other two were only tied with the second elder of the Phoenix people. They were even at a disadvantage. If he escaped and the leader of the merman race joined in, the three of them would immediately be defeated. Senki In and the other two would definitely escape, and the human race team would probably be wiped out. Although Elder Zhong was not a saint, he was still a member of the human race. Naturally, he would not do something so treacherous. Fight! Elder Zhong's eyes were filled with battle intent. Blood intent erupted from the top of his head. He was like an unparalleled god of war as he charged toward the leader of the merman race. This lunatic, the leader of the merman race, had an ugly expression, but he could only fight. I just have to hold this old man back. The leader of the merman race was very cautious. He did not want to fight Elder Zhong head-on. Instead, he planned to wear Elder Zhong down. After all, Elder Zhong's injuries were too severe. Even if he burned his blood essence, he would not be able to hold on for long. However, the following battle made the leader of the merman race even more upset. This was because Elder Zhong was like a lunatic. He had completely given up on defense. Instead, he attacked the leader of the merman race time and time again without hesitation. The leader of the merman race did not even have time to defend himself. He could only passively receive Elder Zhong's crazy attacks and immediately fell into a disadvantage. As time passed, the leader of the merman race's injuries increased. During this period, he had spat out countless mouthfuls of blood. His face was pale, and his aura was getting weaker. His expression was getting worse. There was even fear in his eyes. The old man before him was simply a lunatic. He was attacking without any regard for his life. He knew very well that Elder Zhong's injuries were more severe than his. However, he could not allow this to continue. Even if the old man died before him, he would be half dead by then. Elder Zhong, Zhongli Haoyan saw that Elder Zhong was covered in injuries. His clothes were blood red. They were dyed red by Elder Zhong's blood. The leader of the merman race spat out a mouthful of blood. He looked at Elder Zhong, who was charging toward him again, and could not help but shout in fear. Old man, do you really want to die? Let me tell you, no matter how hard you try, you won't be able to kill me. You'll die in front of me. It doesn't matter. I'll cripple you so that you won't be able to fight. By then, someone will take care of you. Elder Zhong was neither sad nor happy. He continued to attack the leader of the merman race without changing his rhythm. On the space-time tunnel, Zhuan's eyes flickered. He glanced at Elder Zhong and knew that the old man would not be able to last for more than 10 breaths of time. He was acting so valiantly now. It was obvious that this was the final radiance of the setting sun. Elder Zhong would not be able to kill the leader of the merman race within 10 breaths of time. Zhuan's eyes became sharp. He flicked his finger and took out a blood-stained horn. He placed it on the bowstring. Then, he pulled the blood-stained horn into a full moon. An unprecedented, terrifying killing intent filled the entire space-time tunnel. Now that Zhuan's Panga's sacred body had advanced to the later stage of 6 stars, he could pull the bowstring of the Ho-E Divine bow into a full moon easily. Zhuan's eyes were cold. He released the bowstring. Suddenly, the Ho-E Divine arrow shot out with a thunderous sound. Chapter 3046. Su Long's Death Ho-Yi's godly arrow was extremely fast. It tore through the sky like a bolt of lightning. Wherever the divine arrow passed, space would collapse and the laws would be reversed. The killing intent on the surface of the divine arrow, in particular, seemed to be corporeal. It actually formed a blood-red vortex around the divine arrow. The blood-red whirlpools were densely packed around the arrow. They were like countless bloody mouths that could devour everything around them. 10 breaths time was very short. Zhuan only spent 5 breaths time from the moment he drew the bow to the moment he released the Ho-Yi's godly arrow to the moment it arrived in front of the merman leader. At that moment, the merman leader was being held back by Elder Zhong and was at a disadvantage. Damn it! Who is it? How dare you shoot an arrow from the dark? When a merman chief sensed the terrifying killing intent from the divine arrow, he felt the fear of death in his heart and could not help but cry out. If Elder Zhong was too exhausted to fight after 10 breaths time, the merman leader might still be able to avoid the attack of the terrifying Ho-Yi's godly arrow. However, he was being suppressed by Elder Zhong too severely. Moreover, the arrow that shot out from an unknown place in the void this time was many times more terrifying than the previous arrow, be it in terms of its power or the accumulated killing intent. Especially when the killing intent locked onto him, he felt goosebumps all over his body. He could feel that even if he was at his peak, he might be severely injured if he took the arrow head on. If he was hit now, his chances of survival were too slim. Run. I have to run. That was the only thought in the merman leader's mind. Boom. A terrifying blood aura burst out from the merman leader's body. He had burned his blood essence as well. An aura that even surpassed Elder Zhong's came one after another. Old fart, get out of my way. The leader of the merman tribe roared and punched at Elder Zhong. Elder Zhong's expression changed drastically. He realized that the power of the merman leader's punch was far greater than any of his previous attacks. He did not expect the leader of the merfolk race to be able to erupt with such terrifying power after burning her blood essence. However, Elder Zhong was also determined. He knew that he did not have long to live. If he could not eliminate the leader of the merman race, his sacrifice would not be worth mentioning. You're not allowed to do anything. You have to keep the leader of the merfolk here. This was the only thought in Elder Zhong's mind. Elder Zhong desperately burned all the remaining blood essence in his body, and his aura reached an unprecedented height. However, Elder Zhong's body looked extremely tattered. The exposed skin on his face and limbs were even more withered. From afar, he looked like a bag of bones. In a space-time tunnel, Zhuan silently looked at Elder Zhong's miserable state and sighed in his heart. He knew that Elder Zhong was already at the end of his rope. He could only unleash one more attack. After that, Elder Zhong's life would also dissipate. Su Long, this is this old man's final move. You better take it well. Old Zhong's low and deep voice seemed so ethereal. It was like an echo that reverberated in one's ears, sometimes far, sometimes near. Boom! After Elder Zhong finished speaking, he stomped his right foot and disappeared on the spot. He tore through space and charged towards the leader of the merfolk race, Sulong. At this moment, Elder Zhong had abandoned his physical body and life in exchange for the most terrifying destructive power of his final attack. Boom, boom, boom. The moment Elder Zhong and Sulong's fists collided, it was as if countless thunderbolts were raging in the surroundings. Deafening explosions continuously resounded in the surroundings. The moment the loud explosions rang out, an unprecedentedly terrifying wave of air spread out. It was like an ocean in a stormy weather, setting off layer after layer of terrifying waves that were endless and terrifying. Spurt. Elder Zhong and Sulong both spat out large mouthfuls of blood at the same time. Their fists had completely shattered when they collided, and the terrifying shockwaves that spread out even shattered their entire arms to their shoulders. This was only the damage to their bodies. The damage to their spirits was much more serious than the damage to their bodies. Bang! Elder Zhong was heavily smashed into ground, kneeling on one knee. His left hand was placed on his knee, while his right hand was propped up on the ground. His head was lowered, and he did not move at all. As for Sulong, he fell to the ground in a sorry state, smashing a huge hole in the ground. He spat out another mouthful of blood as he lay on the ground, his entire body trembling. His face was pale, and he was actually gasping for air. No, Sulong's injuries were really too severe. He lay on his back in the huge hole, his entire body twitching. He actually did not have any extra strength to support his body and flee this place. After that, the Ishan arrow had already pierced through the air with peerless killing intent. It was terrifyingly fast, arriving before Sulong in an instant. At this moment in the battlefield, everyone raised their eyelids and looked at the divine arrow that was approaching Sulong. In the alien race team, no one made a move. The others were not stupid. They all deeply felt the peerless killing intent in the Ishan arrow. It was really too terrifying. This kind of terrifying killing intent was not something they could withstand. If they were Empyrean masters, they might have been able to block the arrow for Sulong. Unfortunately, the only Empyrean masters in the foreign race team were Sulong and the two elders of the Phoenix race. The second elder of the Phoenix people naturally saw this scene. Although he had the absolute advantage in the joint forces of Senki-In and the other two, he could not take down the three of them in a short period of time. Naturally, he could not free himself to block this arrow for Sulong Puchi. The sound of an arrow piercing into flesh resounded in this space. The divine arrow finally arrived in front of Sulong. Then, under Sulong's terrified gaze, it completely sank into his chest. An arrow of blood spurted out. Sulong's entire body trembled violently. His eyes were wide open in anger as he stared fixedly at the sky. The divine arrow had sunk into his chest, nailing him to the ground. An invisible ripple spread out in all directions with Sulong as the center. It was like a raging wave, extremely ferocious. Sulong roared towards the sky, his voice filled with unwillingness and resentment. Before he died, he didn't even know who the murderer was. His death was truly too unjust. Unfortunately, after Sulong roared towards the sky, he lay on the ground with his eyes wide open. However, his life aura gradually dimmed until it was extinguished. The moment Sulong was killed, Zhuowen discovered that the starry sky token on his waist was violently vibrating. Chapter 3047. Terrifying points 1, 0, 53,000 points? Zhuowen's pupils shrank to the size of needles as he stared at the points on the starry sky, token in disbelief. He clearly remembered that his points on the starry sky token had only been slightly more than 50,000. In the blink of an eye, the points on the starry sky token had increased by 1 million. This was too exaggerated. Zhuowen quickly realized something. Could it be because he had just killed the merman leader, Sulong? Speaking of which, the starry sky token had recognized Zhuowen's cultivation base by default. Although his clone had cultivated the Pangu, sacred body, and had terrifying strength. It was only a body-tempering technique after all. The aura recorded on the starry sky token seemed to be the specific cultivation base aura of the human race. As for the aura of the cloned Pangu's sacred body, the starry sky token seemed to be unable to sense it at all. Therefore, Zhuan's killing of Su Long was equivalent to him crossing a huge gap with his eternal overlord cultivation base and killing a Skirich master expert who stood at the peak of the starry sky. Such an example had probably never happened before in the records of the starry sky contribution ranking, or even among the cultivators of the entire starry sky. After reaching the Skirich master realm, one's means had reached an unfathomable level. All kinds of divine powers and abilities were close to reaching the heavens. It was difficult for a Skirich master expert to kill a Skirich master expert of the same level, let alone an ant like an eternal overlord. Of course, Zhuan also knew that this was entirely due to his good luck. If Elder Zhong hadn't paid the price with his life to beat Su Long to the brink of death, he probably wouldn't have been able to kill Su Long even if he had used the Ho-E Divine Bow and the Ho-E Divine Arrow to shoot the strongest arrow of his life. Everyone present was stunned. The scene was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone's gaze fell on Su Long, who had been firmly nailed to the ground by the divine arrow. There was joy, bewilderment, amazement, and of course, disbelief in their eyes. The powerful and terrifying leader of the Merfolk clan, Su Long, had actually died. Moreover, he had died to a divine arrow that had shot out of nowhere. Thinking of the archer who had yet to show himself, everyone was shocked. They looked around vigilantly, afraid that another arrow would shoot out of nowhere and take away their lives. On the other hand, the humans were much calmer. This archer had shot out 2 divine arrows, both of which had killed non-humans. Clearly, the owner of this divine arrow was on the side of the human race. Who is it? The Phoenix People's Saintess narrowed her eyes in disbelief as she stared at the white cage nailed to the ground by the divine arrow. At the same time, her consciousness had locked onto a certain direction in front of her. She seemed to see a figure in the depths of the void in that direction. However, the figure soon disappeared. When she wanted to use her divine consciousness to investigate again, she discovered that she could no longer find it. The Phoenix People's Saintess stared in that direction. She knew that the cultivator who had shot the arrow was hiding somewhere in the depths of the void in that direction. It wasn't just the Phoenix People's Saintess. The third step Dao validation powerhouses in the human and non-human teams had also discovered the general direction of Zhuan's hiding place. As for Zhuan's specific location, perhaps only a few half-step Ascension Masters and true Ascension Masters will be able to see it. In the space-time tunnel, Zhuan stomped his right foot and rich space-time power spread from the soles of his feet. Then, he quietly left the space-time tunnel and entered another one. At the same time, he evolved the heavenly divination technique to the extreme. The fate aura on his body was completely concealed. However, Zhuan didn't leave immediately. Instead, he hid in another space-time tunnel near the Door of Darkness. He was very confident in his heavenly divination technique. However, concealing the fate aura on his body was something that even the Ascension Masters might not necessarily be able to do. Fate was an attribute that only living beings possessed. Inanimate objects didn't possess. Zhuan used the heavenly divination technique to conceal his fate. In a sense, he was equivalent to an inanimate object. No matter how powerful the Ascension Master's consciousness was, it was unlikely that they would be able to detect an inanimate object in a space-time tunnel deep in the void. Of course, Zhuan's 2 arrows had already revealed that he was hiding in the space-time tunnel near the Door of Darkness. As long as the Ascension Masters in this team searched carefully and locked onto this area, they would still be able to find Zhuan. Zhuan flicked his fingers. He took the arrow, knocked it, drew it, and released it. His movements were as smooth as flowing water, without the slightest hesitation. Whoosh! The divine arrow, filled with killing intent, rushed into the ranks of the non-human teams. Although Zhuan hadn't shot a Ho-E divine arrow this time, it was only a Genesis divine arrow. However, after being strengthened by the divine bow, the arrow seemed to have been given a life of its own, turning it into a killing god. Puff, puff, puff. The divine arrow pierced through the ranks of the non-human teams. Every time it pierced through the ranks of the non-human teams, blood would be spilled. Originally, the non-human races had the upper hand in the battle against the human race. However, with the interference of Zhuan's divine arrow, the non-human teams were thrown into chaos. Zhuan shot out arrow after arrow. Every arrow was like a meteor crashing into the earth, causing a huge commotion among the non-human teams. After Zhuan shot out the 10th arrow, the non-humankind army suffered heavy casualties. 30% of them were killed by the divine arrows, while 10% died under the joint attack of the human army. Most of the remaining non-human teams were injured, and their morale was greatly reduced. The Holy Maiden of the Phoenix people slapped out her palm. Scorching flames surged out and slapped away a divine arrow that was flying through the air. Her beautiful eyes were filled with killing intent. Bastard! Coward! Do you only know how to shoot arrows from the shadows? The Holy Maiden of the Phoenix people shouted angrily into the air. She was going crazy from anger. The non-human teams clearly had the upper hand. If they had been given a little more time, they would have been able to completely crush the human race and wipe out all the humans who had entered the door of darkness. However, she never expected that someone would appear out of nowhere. That person, who was hiding in the depths of the void and whom she had never seen before, was shooting arrows one after another. Furthermore, that person who hadn't shown himself, yet was shooting arrows that were extremely powerful. Little did she know that Lord Tongtian's early-stage divine arrow had pierced through his chest and nailed him to the ground. Both his body and soul had been destroyed. However, that person didn't give up. He continued to shoot arrows, each of which was extremely powerful. In the end, the human race's disadvantage was turned around. Even now, the non-human race's situation was starting to take a turn for the worse. They were being suppressed by the human race to the point of suffocation. I'm coming out. Do you dare to fight me one-on-one? The Holy Maiden of the Phoenix people originally thought that the person shooting arrows would definitely ignore her and continue to shoot arrows. Chapter 3048. The Reckless MDA. A cowering and hiding fellow. Other than shooting arrows, what true abilities do you have? The Saintess doesn't even need to make a move. MDA can easily get rid of you. Elder MDA of the Merfolk race was not far from the Phoenix people's Saintess. Upon seeing Zhuan's provocation, this old fellow immediately spoke up, acting like the Saintess' most loyal dog. He stood beside the Saintess with his head held high and his chest puffed out as he spoke disdainfully. In the space-time tunnel, Zhuan's lips curled up slightly when he saw MDA of the Merfolk race provoking him. Before entering the door of darkness, MDA had caused him a lot of trouble because of Sauron. If it weren't for Xiaojin's support, MDA would have definitely killed him. The current Zhuan was no longer the same as before. Before his Panga sacred body had broken through, he might not have been MDA's match. However, after entering the door of darkness and obtaining Gongong's goo, as well as the inheritance of Gongong's energy, his Panga sacred body had smoothly advanced to 6-star and even directly jumped to late-stage 6-star. His strength had more than doubled. MDA was just an ordinary early-stage Lord of Creation. Although he was stronger than Moses, there was a limit to his strength. In Zhuan's eyes, MDA was just an ant that was slightly stronger than Moses. Are you sure? Zhuan's voice came from the void, making it impossible to tell where it came from. MDA raised his head and puffed out his chest as he said proudly, just a guy who hides his head and shows his tail. In my opinion, you're already amazing if you can last 3 moves against me. Zhuan looked at the puffed-up MDA as if he was looking at an idiot. He really couldn't understand where this guy's confidence came from. He actually looked down on him like this. However, I have a condition. You're not allowed to use that divine arrow you just shot out. You need to fight me openly. Otherwise, I really won't bother to fight you." After saying this, MDA's eyes were very vigilant, and his eyelids were twitching. He guessed that the mysterious human hiding in the depths of the void definitely didn't have a high cultivation, but he had a powerful arrow-type divine weapon. As long as that human doesn't use that strange divine arrow, he won't be a threat to me at all. Huh, so that's what this old fellow is planning. Zhuo scoffed in his heart and opened his mouth once more. "Old fellow, your tone isn't small. I promise you that I won't use that divine arrow." As he spoke, Zhuowen's right foot gently stepped out in the air. Immediately after, intense ripples spread out from under his feet, and his figure gradually disappeared into the void. And MDA's MDA was MDA was MDA studio MDA studio of NDA. MDA grunted and hurriedly retreated until he was around the merman leader, Sukage. Suddenly, an aura that made people tremble appeared above MDA's head. Shortly after, the space above him shattered. MDA raised his head. His eyes were filled with fear. He saw a huge palm in the shattered space above him. The palm was sparkling and translucent. It emitted a glass-like radiance. It didn't look like a real palm. Instead, it looked like an exquisitely carved jade bracelet. MDA regretted it. If he knew that the person who shot the arrow was so terrifying, he wouldn't have stood up for the Saintess of the Phoenix people and provoked such a ruthless person. The Saintess of the Phoenix clan was shocked. She looked at the crystal palm that was pressing down in disbelief. Her pretty face was deathly pale, without the slightest trace of blood, because she felt a familiar and terrifying aura from the palm. It can't be. That guy should be dead. But this aura and attack method are too similar. The Saintess of the Phoenix people muttered to herself. Her face was unsightly. She must have recalled some bad memories. As for all the cultivators who doubted the person who shot the arrow, they were all shocked. Only now did they realize that they had indeed underestimated this person. Not only did this fellow know how to shoot arrows from the back, but he could also face them head-on. He was an all-rounder. MDA cried out in alarm. He unleashed all of his abilities, exploding forth with all of his methods, stimulating 100%, no, it should be 200% of his potential. All the foreign races looked at MDA, their eyes filled with hope. They all cheered loudly for MDA, hoping that MDA would be able to defeat this mountain-like palm. After MDA screamed, under everyone's dumbfounded gazes, he ran away like a wisp of smoke. It was very straightforward, as if he had been planning this for a long time. In the space-time tunnel, Zhuowen sneered repeatedly. Looking at MDA, who had turned around to flee, he said indifferently, "Can you escape?" Rumble. Just as the incomparably huge palm was about to hit the ground, it suddenly changed direction and chased after the fleeing MDA. Although MDA had unleashed all of his abilities, the gap between him and Zhuowen was too great. Before he could escape far, he was caught up by the sparkling and translucent palm. After MDA screamed, he could no longer make any sound, because he had already been smashed into powder by the palm. His divine soul and physical body had collapsed. All traces of him in this world had been annihilated by that unparalleled palm at this moment. Dang, dang, dang. After MDA was smashed into powder by the palm, the whole place became much quieter. But soon, it was broken by light footsteps. Everyone's gazes gathered in the direction of the footsteps. That was where Su Long's corpse was. At this moment, Su Long's eyes were still wide open. He looked at the sky as if lamenting the unfairness of the heavens. Beside Su Long's corpse, a young man was strolling leisurely. It was as if he was leisurely strolling in his own courtyard. This young man had extremely fair cheeks, red lips, and white teeth. If this young man were to wear women's clothes, no one would be able to recognize him as a man. However, the Phoenix people's scientists and many cultivators with high cultivation could tell at a glance that this person was in disguise. Jiang Qixing and Yao Xiangjuan's eyes flashed. They knew that this young man in disguise was most likely Long Wan, who they thought was dead. Although they couldn't recognize Zhuan's real face under his disguise, this person's divine arrow had exposed his identity. The Phoenix people's saintess eyelids twitched. She stared at the handsome young man, her beautiful eyes full of fear. Zhuan slowly walked in front of Su Long's corpse. With a curl of his right index finger, under everyone's gazes, the Ho-E divine arrow that was embedded in Su Long's chest was pulled out and automatically entered Zhuan's palm. After Zhuan put away the Ho-E divine arrow, he ignored the Phoenix people's saintess who was cautiously not far away. Instead, he slowly walked to Elder Zhong, who was kneeling on one knee with his head lowered. At this moment, Zhong Lihao Yin was kneeling in front of Elder Zhong. Her face was covered in tears, and the sorrow in her beautiful eyes couldn't be concealed for a long time. Miss Zhongli, I'm sorry. I didn't have time to save him. Chapter 3049. Appear Zhongli Hao Yin looked up blankly. She glanced at Zhuan, and the confusion in her eyes cleared up a little. Zhuan knew that Zhongli Hao Yin had already guessed his identity. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to look at him so clearly. Brother Long, you don't have to apologize. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't have been able to avenge Elder Zhong. I should be the one thanking you. However, you have to be careful of the Phoenix people's saintess. She should have recognized you. Zhongli Hao Yan's voice rang out in Zhuan's mind. Zhuan knew that she was the one who had sent him a voice transmission. Zhuan nodded and looked at the Phoenix people's saintess, who was standing not too far away. The corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. The moment he had made his move, he knew that the Phoenix people's saintess would have sensed it. However, he didn't care. The Phoenix people's saintess was indeed very strong, especially after she had awakened her bloodline. She was much stronger than MDA, but there was still a big gap between her and Zhuan. Right now, Zhuan was planning to capture the Phoenix people's saintess and find out about Mu Qinshue's whereabouts. Although the Phoenix people's saintess looked almost the same as Mu Qinshu, Zhuan knew that the former wasn't Mu Qinshu at all. She was a completely different person. At that moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Zhuan. Their expressions were surprisingly similar. They were shocked, puzzled, and in disbelief. This was because the aura of this handsome young man who had appeared out of nowhere was actually only at the Eternal Overlord realm. The Eternal Overlord realm was the last realm of the second step of the Tao validation stage. This person was quite young, so his talent was pretty good if he could cultivate to the Eternal Overlord realm. However, this person had actually killed the early stage creation Lord MDA with a flip of his hand. This was too unbelievable. The Creation Lord realm was the second realm of the third step of the Tao validation stage, which was two major realms higher than the Eternal Overlord realm. Logically speaking, a Creation Lord realm cultivator could crush an Eternal Overlord realm as easily as crushing an ant. However, the situation seemed to be reversed now. The Eternal Lord Youth who had suddenly appeared had become the person who could crush an ant, while the initial stage Creation Lord Morta had become an ant. This kind of nondescript result had a huge impact on everyone. It even subverted their worldview. Who is this person? The aura is really familiar. Sun Qi and Yin, who were entangled with the two elders of the Phoenix clan, naturally noticed Zhuan. The three of them exchanged glances with each other, their eyes filled with confusion. They felt that the young man's aura was very familiar, but they couldn't remember who he was. On the other hand, Gao Yanghong, the Grand Elder of the Yin Corp sect, was so shocked that he broke out in a cold sweat. He looked at Zhuan's back with fear. Although he had recognized Zhuan's identity before, he did not expect that this person's strength had actually become so terrifying. Morta, who was at the initial stage Creation Lord realm, had actually been easily destroyed by this fellow. Although Gao Yanghong's cultivation was much higher than Morta's, and he had already reached the level of a half-step Skybound Master, he felt that given his current strength, He could at most fight to a draw with Zhuowen. Perhaps he could even gain the upper hand. However, Gao Yanghong knew that he could not completely crush this person at the moment unless he became a skybound master. As he thought about this, Gao Yanghong glanced at Senki Yin, who was arguing with the Phoenix people in the distance. He wondered if he should inform Senki Yin of Zhuowen's identity. Jiang Qixing and Yao Xiangjuan wanted to walk toward Zhuowen, but were quickly stopped by Zhuowen's voice transmission. Brother Jiang, junior sister Yao, try not to acknowledge me now. I have a lot of enemies now. If you acknowledge me, I'm afraid you will be implicated. Just pretend that you don't know me. Zhuowen's voice lingered in their minds, stopping them from taking a step forward. Jiang Qixing and Yao Xiangjuan looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They silently glanced at Zhuowen's back and no longer moved forward. What Zhuowen said was right. The two of them were too weak. If they went over to acknowledge Zhuowen now, it was inevitable that they would be targeted. Although they had their own factions supporting them, Zhuowen had offended a lot of people. Yihan Fei of the Yin and Yang Divine sect had been killed by Zhuowen. After that, he had killed many powerful foreign race geniuses and offended the Phoenix people. Could it be that if they acknowledged Zhuowen, the powers behind them would help Zhuowen? This was obviously impossible. The two of them felt helpless. They transmitted their voices to Zhuowen, telling him to be careful, and retreated to their respective groups. At the same time, the two of them were also curious about how Long Wen had been resurrected and how he had left the door of darkness earlier than them. They didn't know what method Long Wen had used. Zhuowen ignored the surrounding gazes and looked at the Phoenix people's Saintess. He said indifferently, "Saintess, do you dare to fight me one-on-one?" As soon as these words came out, many people's gazes fell on the Phoenix people's Saintess. Then, they turned back to Zhuowen with strange gazes. Everyone knew that the Phoenix people's Saintess was a famous monstrous genius in the primitive heaven realm. She had the 99 Phoenix body and possessed monstrous strength. Many experts of the older generation weren't necessarily a match for the Phoenix people's Saintess. Although the Phoenix people's Saintess cultivation was lower than Mu Da's, they knew that the Phoenix people's Saintess was much stronger than Mu Da. Killing Mu Da wouldn't take too much effort. In everyone's eyes, the strength of the Phoenix people's Saintess should be second only to the two Skirich masters in the foreign race group. Although the sudden appearance of this human youth had shocked everyone, it wasn't enough. Therefore, when this person proposed to fight the Phoenix people's Saintess, everyone sneered. They felt that this person was masochistic. He actually dared to challenge the Phoenix people's Saintess. This is ridiculous. How dare you threaten to fight the Saintess one-on-one? You're not qualified. That's right. Who do you think you are? You're just a despicable human. How dare you challenge the Saintess? The Saintess won't accept the challenge of a despicable human like you. Even if she did, she could kill you with a slap. However, that would dirty her hands. Everyone in the foreign race group looked at Zhuowen unkindly. Some of them even belittled Zhuowen. Zhuowen completely ignored these taunts. Instead, he looked indifferently at the Phoenix people's Saintess. Killing intent flashed in his eyes as he continued. The dignified Saintess doesn't even have the courage to accept my challenge. The beautiful eyes of the Phoenix people's Saintess flickered as she looked at Zhuowen. Her eyes were full of fear. After she guessed that this person was Long Wen, she had already wanted to retreat. One had to know that she had fought Zhuowen on the Sorcerer God's altar in the Door of Darkness. She knew how terrifying and powerful the latter was. If this guy hadn't been distracted during that battle, she would have been in danger. She might even have died. Chapter 3050. Fleeing in defeat, Zhuowen ignored the cries of the foreign races and slowly walked toward the Phoenix people's Saintess. The killing intent in his eyes was so strong that it seemed to materialize. When some of the foreign races experts were about to make a move, the human experts immediately released their auras to suppress the foreign races experts. The foreign race experts didn't dare to act rashly. They knew very well that if they were to attack this human, the human experts wouldn't let this matter rest. At that time, another huge battle would ensue. They were afraid that they wouldn't be able to do anything to this red-lipped, white-toothed human. Therefore, the foreign race experts all looked toward the Phoenix People's Saintess. Their eyes were filled with hope, hoping that the Saintess would attack and destroy this arrogant human. Since this human doesn't know what's good for him, then the Saintess should attack and destroy this ant. Save him the trouble of shouting in front of us. Just looking at him is annoying. Haha, this person is courting death. He doesn't even know how strong the Saintess is. That's the 99 Phoenix body. It's a powerful constitution rarely seen in the Phoenix people for countless years. It far surpasses the majority of the Phoenix people's bloodline. The foreign race experts looked coldly at Joan, who was slowly walking toward them. In their hearts, they all thought that this person was courting death. With the strength of the Phoenix People's Saintess, she would be able to destroy this arrogant human in just a few moves. On the human side, many experts frowned. They felt that this guy who had suddenly appeared was a bit too arrogant. He actually wanted to challenge the Phoenix People's Saintess. In the Scarlet Mountain Villa team, Yi Qidong was accompanied by a skinny middle-aged man. This middle-aged man's aura was very powerful. He should be a powerful creation realm expert. At this moment, the middle-aged man couldn't help but shake his head. This person is too arrogant. He actually wants to challenge the Phoenix People's Saintess. He probably doesn't know how terrifying the Saintess is. The ignorant are truly fearless. Yi Qidong, who was standing beside the middle-aged man, looked at Zhuan's back with a complicated expression. When he heard the middle-aged man's evaluation of Zhuan, he subconsciously said, "This person might be a match for the Phoenix People's Saintess." The middle-aged man looked at Yi Qidong with a strange gaze and said, "Qidong, are you all right? Weren't you praising the Saintess of the Phoenix people? You even said that you're not as good as the Saint. Now you're saying that the Phoenix People's Saint won't lose. If my guess is correct, the Saint of the Phoenix people will definitely lose." Yi Qidong sighed softly. His gaze as he looked at Zhuan's back became even more complicated. When Zhuan attacked just now, he had already guessed that this person was Long One, who had almost defeated the Phoenix People's Saintess in the Door of Darkness. Although this person had changed his appearance, his attacking methods had not changed. That was why Yi Qidong had such a guess. This person's level of abnormality had completely surpassed the Phoenix People's Saintess. If this person hadn't been distracted at the end, the Phoenix People's Saintess would definitely have lost. But what Yi Qidong found strange was that this Long One had not been destroyed by the Phoenix People's Saintess Phoenix Wing Flame Wheel at the Sorcerer God altar, and it had already been confirmed that he had fallen. Why had he appeared now? The middle-aged man looked at Yi Qidong in astonishment, as if it was the first time he had seen Yi Qidong. Then he shook his head and didn't say anything. In his opinion, Yi Qidong's conclusion was not reliable at all. He actually said that the Phoenix People's Saintess would definitely lose. It was really a fallacy. In the human team, there were many people who had the same thoughts as the middle-aged man. They all thought that Zhuan had taken the initiative to provoke the Phoenix People's Saintess. But what no one noticed was that the Phoenix People's Saintess had a look of apprehension and fear on her face. Zhuan walked very slowly. However, the distance between him and the Phoenix People's Saintess wasn't far. Soon, he was not far from the Phoenix People's Saintess. A powerful aura suddenly emerged from the Phoenix People's Saintess. Then the Saintess coldly looked at Zhuan and said, "You dare to take another step forward?" Zhuan stopped and looked at the Phoenix People's Saintess with a strange expression. In the eyes of others, everyone thought that Zhuan was afraid of the Phoenix People's Saintess, and that was why he stopped. However, the Phoenix People's Saintess knew that wasn't the case. It was because this guy saw that she was feeling guilty that he stopped. If you had answered my previous question, why wouldn't I have continued? Zhuan said indifferently. The Phoenix People's Saintess' beautiful eyes immediately turned cold. She knew what Zhuan's question was. She definitely couldn't answer this kind of question. Seeing that the Phoenix People's Saintess had become silent, Zhuan's gaze became even colder. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile, but it was a very cold smile. "Since you won't say it, I have a way to make you say it." After saying this, Zhuan's body emitted a sparkling light. His right foot stomped on the void and shot out like a cannonball. His target was the Phoenix People's Saintess. "You're courting death." Seeing that Zhuowen actually dashed toward the Phoenix People's Saintess, the alien race experts sneered in their hearts. They felt that this person was in a hurry to be reincarnated. But soon, the Phoenix People's Saintess' next move slapped the alien race experts who were extremely confident in the Saintess in the face. The Phoenix People's Saintess actually retreated the moment Zhuowen dashed toward her. Moreover, the Saintess's speed was so fast that it was dazzling. Not long after she retreated, she had already taken out her flying divine weapon and immediately fled in a direction. Everyone was stunned. What was going on? The Phoenix People's Saintess was truly gifted. She was a famous young demon in the eldritch heavenly realm. Her strength had even surpassed most of the experts of the older generation. Originally, they had the impression that the Saintess would unleash a terrifying power and teach this arrogant human a lesson. Then, she would trample on him and destroy him. But now, the scene in front of them was too unexpected. The Saintess was actually running away in fear. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and immediately took out the space-time roulette. Then, he used the space-time power and instantly escaped into the space-time tunnel. Ever since Zhuowen had obtained the space-time crystal from Sharu's body, his control of the space-time power had reached an extremely high level. Now that he was using the space-time roulette, its speed was naturally much faster than before. The Phoenix People's Saintess and Zhuowen soon disappeared from everyone's sight. Only then did the human and alien race teams react. Everyone was in an uproar. The Phoenix People's Saintess had actually fled. This shocked everyone. Chapter 3051. Suspicions. The second elder of the Phoenix people, who had been fighting Senki Yin, Xiang Puyu, and in Shaojin, immediately realized that something was wrong when he saw the Saintess running away. He snorted coldly, and the flames on his body suddenly grew several times stronger. Waves of fire swept out like water ripples, spreading out in all directions at an extremely fast speed, shaking the entire space. Senki Yin, Xiang Puyu, and in Shaojin's expressions changed slightly, and they all took out their strongest divine artifacts to block in front of them. Bang! 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 3 muffled sounds rang out as the waves of fire swept over, almost shattering the divine artifacts around them. Then they all spat out mouthfuls of blood, their faces pale as they constantly retreated. This was clearly the second elder's strongest move. His face was clearly somewhat pale, and his breathing had also become hurried. After forcing Senki Yin and the other 2 to retreat, the second elder of the Phoenix people ignored the others and took a step forward, disappearing from where he stood. Everyone knew that the second elder of the Phoenix people had most likely gone to help the Saintess of the Phoenix people. That human race is probably finished. This was the thought in the hearts of all the humans and aliens. Exterminate all the aliens. Sun Qian and the other 2 were pleasantly surprised. With the departure of the 2 elders of the Phoenix clan, there were no more supreme experts at the level of sky-reaching masters in the alien army. On the other hand, there were 3 primary sky-reaching masters on their side. The following battle would be one-sided. In an instant, the morale of the humans was greatly boosted, and the aliens also knew that without the support of the transcending heaven masters, they were no match for the humans. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter, and they all fled. The humans, on the other hand, were beating the dogs that had fallen into the water. They chased after the aliens and almost wiped them out completely. Senki Yin landed beside Gao Yanghong and watched the scene of the humans chasing after the aliens. He knew that even if he didn't join in, the aliens would be finished. At this moment, Senki Yin looked at Gao Yanghong with a solemn gaze and said in a deep voice, "Yanghong, is what you said true?" Gao Yanghong hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "Sect Master, this is absolutely true. Back then, didn't Zhuo enter the secret underground room? At that time, he shot a terrifying arrow from the secret underground room and destroyed the passage. I even suffered a minor injury. And this young man who suddenly appeared also shot the same arrow. His aura is almost exactly the same as the arrow Zhuowen shot from the secret underground room. Both are murderous and awe-inspiring. Senki's eyes glared in a murderous look. What is Zhuowen? He actually sneaked into the door of darkness. Today, I will definitely capture this kid. I must get the Yamas. After Sun Qian called Gao Yang Hong to go with him, the two of them turned into two streams of light and flew in the direction the two elders of the Phoenix clan left. Sun Qian's departure quickly attracted the attention of Xiang Puyu and Shaojin. What's going on with Senki Yin? He actually chased after the Phoenix people's second elder? Is he courting death? Xiang Puyu muttered to himself, puzzled, and Shaojin also frowned. He sent a message to Senki Yin and quickly received a response. Xiang Puyu came over and read the message in Shaojin's communication talisman. A strange expression appeared on his face as he muttered to himself. When did Senki Yin become so enthusiastic? He actually wants to help that young man. I'm afraid he wants to recruit that young man into the 10 Extremes Yin Corp sect. That young man isn't simple, and we've never seen him before. I'm afraid he's a loose cultivator. And Shaojin said. Xiang Puyu nodded, then looked at the Yin and Yang Divine Sects team and asked in surprise, Old Jin, I don't think I've seen Yihan Fei. He didn't come out of the door of darkness? And Shaojin suddenly remembered and looked at the Yin and Yang Divine Sects team. Sure enough, he didn't see Yihan Fei. His expression changed slightly as he excused himself from Xiang Puyu and landed in the Yin and Yang Divine Sects team. Have you seen Yihan Fei? And Shaojin asked with a gloomy face. He had a bad feeling. Could it be that Yihan Fei had fallen in the door of darkness? The disciples of the Yin and Yang Divine Sect looked at each other and shook their heads. Yihan Fei had escaped alone after being defeated by Zhuowen in the strange world. As for where he went, the disciples of the Yin and Yang Divine Sect didn't know. However, the disciples clearly told Shaojin about the conflict between Yihan Fei and Long One. After hearing this, and Shaojin's expression turned ugly. At the same time, he was shocked. Long One was so strong that even Yihan Fei was no match for him. At the same time, and Shaojin's gaze fell on Yao Xiangjuan. According to the disciples, Yao Xiangjuan had a good relationship with Long One. Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes were calm as she took out a jade bottle from her spiritual ring and handed it to Shaojin. Sect Master, this is the ancestral witch's blood essence. Brother Long went through a lot of trouble to obtain it. He told me to give this bottle of ancestral witch's blood essence to you to fulfill his promise. What? Ancestral witch's blood essence? And Shaojin was shocked. He hurriedly took the jade bottle that Yao Xiangjuan had given him and opened the cork. An extremely rich life, force energy rushed out from it. And Shaojin quickly put the cork back on the bottle. His eyes flickered, and he couldn't calm down for a long time. He didn't expect that Zhuowen would really keep his promise and bring him a bottle of ancestral witch's blood essence. What about Long One? And Shaojin asked anxiously. Yao Xiangjuan's beautiful eyes dimmed as she said, Sect Master, Brother Long is really good at extracting ancestral witch's blood essence. He took most of the ancestral witch's blood essence. He asked me to bring this bottle to you to fulfill his promise. Unfortunately what? And Shaojin asked anxiously when he heard that Zhuowen had obtained most of the ancestral witch's blood essence. If Zhuowen had really obtained so much ancestral witch's blood essence, he would have to ask Zhuowen for more even if he didn't want it. After all, the ancestral witch's blood essence was very useful for his cultivation. Brother Long has fallen. He was killed by the Phoenix people's Saintus. Senior Brother Yi and Senior Brother Sidhu also saw it with their own eyes. Yao Xiangjuan sighed. What? He has fallen? In other words, most of the ancestral witch's blood essence was taken by the Phoenix people's Saintus? And Shaojin frowned. Yes, the Phoenix people's Saintus also took away the inheritance of ancestral witch Gonggong. She was the one who benefited the most from the door of darkness. Yao Xiangjuan said, and Shaojin sighed and didn't say anything. He also didn't ask about Ihan Fei. Since Ihan Fei hadn't come out until now, he had most likely fallen in the door of darkness. Moreover, and Xiaojing guessed that Ihan Fei's fall should be related to Longwen. However, Longwen had also fallen in there. Naturally, he couldn't pursue this matter. Chapter 3052. Chase in the Void. Two streams of flowing light flashed by. The one in front was bursting with flaming flowing light. It was so fast that only an illusory flame could be seen in the dark space. On the other hand, the streak of light behind him was faintly discernible, as if it was shuttling through a different space-time continuum. It was clearly very far away, but in the next moment, it was as if space-time had been warped, and it arrived right before him in the blink of an eye. The Phoenix People's Saintess sat on the deck of the flying divine artifact. She kept making hand seals with her jade-like hands. She kept transferring her heavenly energy to the flying divine artifact, making it go faster and faster. However, the Saintess of the Phoenix People was very flustered. She looked behind her from time to time and found that Zhuowen was actually very close behind her. There were no signs of him being shaken off at all. Her expression was very ugly. How does this guy know the power of space-time? And he's using it so skillfully, even more so than many space-time beasts. How'd he do it? The Phoenix People's Saintess looked at Zhuowen, who had not only not been left behind, but was also getting closer and closer to her. Her beautiful eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. Although she knew that many human cultivators had comprehended the laws of space-time and used the power of space-time, she was well aware that in terms of the use of the power of space-time, no other race in this starry sky could compare to the space-time beasts. Space-time beasts were born with an extremely sensitive perception of space-time energy. Moreover, their bodies would naturally contain space-time crystals. This allowed space-time beasts to get close to the laws of space-time and grasp space-time energy as soon as they were born. The space-time beasts were born with this ability, and as they continued to grow, their control of space-time power would become stronger and more terrifying. The Phoenix People's Saintess knew that some of the Phoenix people she belonged to had learned the power of time and space, but they could only grasp it roughly. No one could control the power of time and space as accurately as the space-time beasts. However, the space-time power that this man wielded was not inferior to that of the time beast race prodigy Sharu. He caught up. The Phoenix People's Saintess only felt the whistling sound behind her. Her beautiful eyes could not help but narrow. She looked behind her and saw that Zhuowen was driving the space-time roulette and was rapidly approaching her. The Phoenix People's Saintess's beautiful eyes flashed. She was about to continue urging the flying divine artifact to increase its speed, but her expression greatly changed. Then, the Saintess of the Phoenix People of the Space of the Phoenix Peoples of the Space. Then, the ripples of the ripples like broken glass, and the space like a shattered. With a loud bang, the space in front of her shattered. A figure appeared in front of the Phoenix clan, holy maiden like a god descending to the world. Boom, boom, boom. This figure was very straightforward. The moment he appeared, he threw out a punch. The surface of his fist was covered with sparkling light. The power of the punch soared into the sky, as if it was going to shatter the sky. The Saintess of the Phoenix People's pretty face changed greatly. She hurriedly retreated, but she found that the whistling sound behind her was still there, and it was getting closer and closer. She turned around abruptly and saw that Zhuowen was behind her. He was dressed in white and was still driving the space-time roulette. He was quickly chasing after her. In front of her, the person who was throwing the punch was also Zhuowen, but he was dressed in black. The two people in front and behind looked the same, but their clothes were different. They were like two black and white demons, sandwiching the Saintess of the Phoenix People in the middle. The black-clothed Zhuowen was naturally a clone that had cultivated the Pangu's sacred body, while the white-clothed Zhuowen was the original body. As soon as the Phoenix clan's holy maiden turned her attention to her back, Zhuowen had secretly separated his doppelganger and hid it somewhere. When Zhuowen was chasing after the Phoenix People's Saintess, he had already predicted her specific route in advance. That was why his clone could accurately intercept the Saintess. "You can't escape." The black-clothed Juan's eyes were cold. He stepped in front of the Phoenix People Saintess. His right fist seemed to have traveled through time and space, glowing with a glass-like light. It quickly arrived in front of the Saintess of the Phoenix People. The Saintess of the Phoenix People's pretty face changed greatly. She waved her jade-like hand, and suddenly, a raging red flame burst out from her palm. The Phoenix People's Saintess blasted out a palm, but she did not directly hit the black-clothed Juon in front of her. Instead, she quickly retreated and blasted her palm toward the white-clothed Juon, who was sitting in the space-time roulette behind her. The Phoenix People's Saintess's intuition was very accurate. She could tell at a glance that the black-clothed Juon's strength was much stronger than the white-clothed Juon behind her. If she chose to fight the black-clothed Juon head-on, she would not be able to gain the slightest advantage. The white-clothed Juon sat upright in the space-time roulette. His eyes were as calm as a demon's. He silently looked at the approaching Saintess of the Phoenix People and the terrifying palm she had thrown out. It had to be said that the strength of the Phoenix People's Saintess was indeed terrifying. This palm should be the strongest palm she had ever used. The raging flames soared into the sky, as if they were going to burn the entire sky. In the midst of the endless flames, a huge palm came crushing down. Around the flaming palm, one after another, the shadows of phoenixes danced and hovered. The surrounding temperature had reached a point where it was unbearable. The entire space seemed to be collapsing. The Phoenix People's Saintess found it strange that the black-clothed Juon behind her did not show any signs of worry. Instead, he continued to follow her closely. His fist was like a tracking missile, following her like a shadow. This made the Phoenix People's Saintess very anxious. She could not wait to get rid of the white-clothed Juon behind her, who was blocking her retreat. Boom! The terrifying flaming palm finally fell on the white-clothed Juon's head. The white-clothed Juon finally moved. With a flick of his finger, he quickly took out a blood-colored longbow. The moment he took out the longbow, he pinched an arrow with his right hand and pulled the bowstring. The arrow carried endless killing intent as it pierced through the air. In an instant, it blasted the surface of the flaming palm. Bang! 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 Continuous sounds could be heard from the flaming palm. Those sounds were very concentrated and very loud. As for the descending flaming palm, it was as if time had stopped. It stopped in midair. Countless sparks erupted from the flaming palm and poured down in midair like a rain of fire. It looked very gorgeous. The beautiful eyes of the Phoenix People's Saintess widened. She saw with her own eyes that her most powerful palm had been shattered into countless sparks and turned into a rain of fire. The white-clothed Juon spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. He looked at the flaming palm that had been destroyed and heaved a sigh of relief. Chapter 3053. Interrogation. As the flaming palm dissipated, the Saintess of the Phoenix People couldn't help but take a few steps back. Her beautiful eyes were filled with shock. However, the power of the flaming palm was indeed not bad. The divine arrow that was filled with murderous intent was actually dissipated by the flaming palm. Juon's eyes were filled with surprise. Although he had only shot out an ordinary divine arrow of the Genesis level, with the support of the Godly Bow, the power of the divine arrow was comparable to that of an ordinary divine arrow of the creation level. It was evident that the all-out attack of the Phoenix People's Saintess was indeed incredible. Boom! At that moment, the black-robed Juon took a step forward and arrived not far from the Phoenix People's Saintess. His right fist glowed with a crystalline light as he punched directly at the Saintess's back. The Saintess's beautiful eyes were piercingly cold. The blood in her body boiled as waves of flames surged out of her body, accompanied by an extremely terrifying and powerful aura. Boom! The Saintess still struck out with her palm. When the fist and the palm collided, a terrifying aura erupted. Immediately, the black-robed Juon and the Saintess were both pushed back. However, the saintess was pushed back more, and her beautiful face was pale. Clearly, she was completely at a disadvantage in this exchange. You burned your blood essence. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed as he watched the saintess's aura continue to rise. He was somewhat surprised. The saintess, on the other hand, quickly fled the moment she retreated. She had indeed burned her blood essence. Originally, she thought that she would be able to stop Zhuowen. She didn't expect that she would still be at a disadvantage. She knew very well that even if she burned her blood essence, she would still be no match for this person. The black-robed Zhuowen's body flashed and merged with his body. Using the power of time and space, he teleported out and once again blocked the path of the Phoenix People Saintess. What followed was another punch. This time, Zhuowen even used the profound meaning of the death of heaven and earth. The destructive power lingered on the surface of his fist, causing the power of his punch to reach an unprecedented level. The saintess had no choice but to strike out with her palm again. Countless phantoms of the phoenix swept out. Bang! Unfortunately, the energy in the Holy Maiden's palm was completely destroyed by Zhuowen's punch. The Holy Maiden spat out a mouthful of blood and was forced back. The moment the saintess retreated, Zhuowen grabbed her right hand and used his free left hand to summon the Beast Bone Formation Plate. The Formation Plate surrounded the saintess, and the restrictive power was extremely strong. For a moment, the saintess was unable to move. I know you know where Chen Shui is. As long as you tell me where Chen Shui is, I won't make it hard for you and will immediately let you go. Zhuowen coldly looked at the saintess in front of him. The saintess of the Phoenix people sneered, but didn't say anything. She just looked to the side. Do you think I won't dare to do anything to you? Zhuowen was a little angry. He tore off the saintess veil, revealing an appearance that was almost the same as Mu Qinshue's. Zhuowen stared at her in a daze for a while. Soon after, he found that the saintess in front of him was indeed very similar to Mu Qinshu, but there were some differences in other areas. For example, on the left side of the saintess' lips, there was an unremarkable red mole. Mu Qinshu didn't have this red mole. You really are bold. You actually dare to tear off my veil without permission. The saintess angrily shouted. Zhuowen's lips were filled with a cold smile. He tore off the saintess' sleeve, instantly revealing a large part of her snow-white skin. The saintess' beautiful eyes opened wide. She looked at Zhuowen in disbelief and shouted, "Longwen, what are you trying to do?" Zhuowen gave a cold laugh. He completely ignored the saintess who was about to go crazy. He reached out with both hands and tore off the saintess' sleeve, revealing a large part of her snow-white skin. Then, Zhuowen took out a recording crystal and recorded everything that happened in front of the saintess. "You pervert." The saintess' beautiful eyes opened wide. She looked at the human in front of her in disbelief. She never thought that this fellow would be such a bad thing, actually having such thoughts about her. "I'm not interested in you, but your attitude has angered me, so I did this. Tell me where Chen Shui is. Otherwise, the things recorded in this recording crystal will be spread across the entire starry sky." Zhuowen coldly said. The saintess fell silent. Then she cried out in shock and said, "Long One, if you dare to do this, the Phoenix people and I will not let you go. You will be hunted down by the Phoenix people no matter where you go." Zhuowen gave a cold laugh and ignored the saintess' threat. Even if he did not spread the recording crystal, the Phoenix people would not let him go. He did not have any worries right now. He only wanted to know where Mu Qinshu was and where she was. He was a little worried that Mu Qinshu would be treated unfairly by the Phoenix people. If it really was like this, he would rush to the Phoenix people and bring Mu Qinshu back. Since you don't want to say it, then I'm sorry. I'll send the image of this recording crystal to all my friends, and they will naturally spread it. After Zhuowen said this, he took out the communication talisman and planned to send the image of the recording crystal. When the saintess saw Zhuowen's actions, she was scared witless. If this image was sent out, it would have a large impact on her reputation. At that time, she would not be able to raise her head in the great desolate heaven domain anymore. Seeing that Zhuowen was really going to send it out, The saintess panicked and quickly said, "Wait." Juan did not care about the saintess at all. He had already opened the communication talisman and sent the image of the recording crystal to the communication talisman. "I'll say it." The saintess opened her mouth again. Juan finally stopped and coldly looked at Juan. His expression was cold as he said, "Then why haven't you said it yet?" The saintess angrily looked at Juan, but she found that the latter's expression was still terrifyingly calm. She could only lower her head and say, "Our Phoenix people indeed have a person named Mu Chinshue, and she is a human. I've heard that this Mu Chinshue was brought back by the 3 clan elders from the 8 heavens domains." Juan revealed a look of pleasant surprise and quickly said, "Then how is Chun Shui now? Also, why do you have the 99 Phoenix body? I remember that only Chun Shui has this physique." The saintess' beautiful eyes sparkled, and finally she said in a deep voice, "It's like this. That Mu Chinshue is a human, but she has the 99 Phoenix body. This is a very dangerous matter. The 99 Phoenix body is one of the strongest and most terrifying bloodlines in the history of the Phoenix people. It is a super physique rarely seen in 10,000 years. Once the 99 Phoenix body's bloodline is activated, if one does not have a strong physical body to support them, their body will collapse and their divine soul will be destroyed. That Mu Chinshue is a human, so if she activates her bloodline, she will die without a doubt. So, in order to protect Mu Chinshue's life, the clan elders transferred the 99 Phoenix body's bloodline from her to me. My bloodline is the highest grade among the Phoenix people, so I can completely withstand the 99 Phoenix body's bloodline." Chapter 3054. Second Elder. You extracted the 99 Phoenix body's bloodline from Chen Shui? Juan's eyes were filled with killing intent. Although he did not know much about the 99 Phoenix body, he knew how cruel and painful it was to transfer one's bloodline. He could imagine how much pain Mu Chinshue would have to suffer during the process of her bloodline being extracted. Is there anything wrong with that? If the 99 Phoenix body remained in Mu Chinshue's body, she would have died as a human. By transferring her bloodline to me, Mu Chinshue would have kept her life, right? The saintess trembled under Juan's terrifying killing intent, but she still tried to defend herself. Despicable race. Perhaps you should have a taste of your bloodline being extracted. Juan's eyes were cold as he placed his right hand on the saintess's forehead. Juan used the power of the Pangu's sacred body to extract the 99 Phoenix body's bloodline from the saintess's body. Pangu had the strongest bloodline under the starry sky and was the origin of countless bloodlines. Although the 99 Phoenix body was strong, it was not as strong as the Pangu sacred body. It was because the Pangu sacred body's bloodline was at the peak that all other bloodlines had to submit to it. In other people's eyes, if they wanted to extract the 99 Phoenix body's bloodline, they would have to go through a very complicated process and spend a lot of manpower and resources. However, Juan, who had the Pangu's sacred body, did not need to go through so much trouble. With the advantage of the Pangu bloodline, Juan could easily extract any bloodline that was lower than the Pangu bloodline. This was the advantage and privilege of the Pangu bloodline. "What are you doing?" The saintess felt the 99 Phoenix body's bloodline boiling and throbbing, as if it was going to leave her body at any time. She finally panicked and asked Juan loudly, "The 99 Phoenix body does not belong to you. I want to take it back." Juan's voice was very cold. After saying this, he stopped talking and began to extract the 99 Phoenix body's bloodline from the saintess's body. "No, don't." The saintess of the Phoenix people screamed and began to beg, but Juan ignored her. However, Juan was very cautious. When he extracted the saintess bloodline, he had already entered the space-time tunnel and used the art of divination to conceal his aura. An hour later, Juan extracted all of the 99 Phoenix body's bloodline from the saintess body and carefully placed it into a jade bottle. The saintess collapsed on the ground, her body trembling. Her eyes were dull and lost. The intense pain made her lie on the ground, not wanting to move at all. Long one day, you will pay the price for what you did today. The Holy Maiden glared at Zhuowen with venomous eyes. Zhuowen ignored the Holy Maiden's gaze. With a wave of his sleeve, he took the Holy Maiden into his great world. Ghost Plume and Yin Wuxia were still in the great world. Zhuowen instructed the two of them to take good care of the Saintess before leaving the space-time tunnel. He planned to return to the Starry Sky Pagoda and inquire about the way to enter the Eldritch Heaven realm. He learned from the Saintess that Mu Qinxue should still be alive. However, the Phoenix people probably didn't treat her as well. After all, the Phoenix people had extracted the 99 Phoenix bodies' bloodline from Mu Qinxue. This was the only thing that the Phoenix people valued about Mu Qinxue. In addition, Mu Qinxue was only a human. Her life in the Phoenix people would definitely not be easy. However, the moment Zhuowen left the space-time tunnel, his expression changed. He found that the space around him was abruptly ignited with terrifying flames. The scorching heat evaporated the surrounding air completely. An unprecedentedly terrifying pressure descended on Zhuowen's body. It made Zhuowen feel suffocated and suffocated. Zhuowen's body erupted with an intense crystalline light. At the critical moment, he immediately broke free from the terrifying pressure and retreated several hundred meters. Boom! The moment Zhuowen retreated, he immediately saw an incomparably huge flaming fist appear where he was originally standing. It smashed into the original spot, annihilating the space and dispersing it. Your reaction isn't bad. A surprised voice came from the void. Soon after, Zhuowen saw a figure slowly walking over from the void in front of him. When this figure arrived in the domain of flames, the surrounding fierce flames were like tamed hounds. All of them crawled at the feet of this person. This was an old man with a solemn expression. He wore a fiery red robe that seemed to merge with the surrounding flames. The moment Zhuowen saw this old man, his expression turned ugly. This was because this old man was the second elder of the Phoenix people. He was an expert at the early stage of the sky-piercing Master Realm. This second elder's strength was truly terrifying. He was able to suppress Senki Yin and the other two by himself. He was much stronger than an ordinary expert at the early stage of the sky-piercing Master Realm. Zhuowen was very afraid of this old man. At the same time, he was also a little shocked. This old man didn't care about the foreign race team and chased after him. It seemed like this old man attached great importance to the Phoenix people's Saintess. Where's the Saintess? The second elder landed in the domain of flames and looked at Zhuowen's body that was emitting a sparkling light. He slowly narrowed his eyes and asked indifferently, I didn't catch up to the Saintess. She escaped in that direction. You can go in that direction to look for her. Zhuowen pointed behind him and lied without blushing or skipping a beat. Do you really think I'm an idiot? I'm very sensitive to the Saintess's aura. I chased all the way here, and the Saintess's aura was cut off here, and you appeared here. The Saintess must have been captured by you. The second elder looked at Zhuowen, no longer concealing the killing intent in his eyes. What? You want to kill me? Zhuowen knew that he couldn't hide it from the second elder, so he didn't plan to hide it anymore. Instead, he slowly narrowed his eyes and said firmly. The second elder frowned slightly. The Saintess was captured by this person, so her life was definitely in his hands. If he killed her, the Saintess might be in danger. Let go of the Saintess, and I can let you go. Also, I'll let bygones be bygones for offending the Saintess. The second elder retracted his killing intent and said indifferently, I'm sorry, but I'm not interested in letting go of the Saintess. Zhuowen retreated step by step. The moment he retreated to the edge of the domain of flames, he took out an escape talisman and crushed it. His whole body turned into a stream of light and disappeared on the spot. You can't escape. The second elder's eyes were calm. He stomped his right foot, and the surrounding flames suddenly surged. Then he turned into countless sparks and disappeared on the spot. In the dark and cold void, a stream of light flashed and appeared on top of a meteorite. This person was Zhuowen, dressed in white. Zhuan's face didn't look too good. He looked behind him and saw that not far behind him, a stream of fire was quickly chasing after him. It was like a sticky candy that he couldn't shake off. Damn it, I used 3 billion miles talismans, and I still can't shake off this old guy. Chapter 3055. Rise to fame. The atmosphere in the space where the Starry Sky Tower was located was extremely solemn. With the Starry Sky Tower as the core, streaks of light flowed in the sky above the 4 camps, forming a curtain-like barrier. If Zhuan were to come to the Starry Sky Tower, he would definitely be shocked. This was because the barrier formed by the streaks of light was a very high-level formation restriction that far surpassed the Genesis level. This was the first time that the 4 space camps had activated all their defensive restrictions. The human cultivators in the Starry Sky Tower all held divine weapons and guarded the edge of the camp. Their cold gazes passed through the barrier and looked outside the camp. In the pitch-black void outside the Starry Sky Tower, a black mass of foreign races floated and looked at the Starry Sky Tower covetously. If it weren't for the fact that these foreign races were wary of the formation restrictions in the camp, they would probably have attacked in groups by now. At this moment, 4 figures floated above the tall and majestic Starry Sky Tower. The 4 figures looked very ordinary, but the movements of the 4 of them contained power that could shatter the world. Below the Starry Sky Tower, all the human clan cultivators looked at the 4 figures with awe and respect in their eyes. I really didn't expect the 4 down masters to appear as well. It seems like the invasion of the foreign races this time has caused a huge commotion. Nonsense, didn't you see those foreign races? I saw at least 7 races, and all of them are strong races among the 10 great races. And this is because I didn't count clearly. If I did, the number of races would probably be far greater than you, and I can imagine. Many of the humans gathered below the Starry Sky Tower were discussing spiritedly. They looked at the countless foreign races in the void outside the Starry Sky Tower with worried gazes. The invasion of the foreign races had come too suddenly. At that time, the human race in the Starry Sky battlefield had been caught off guard and had lost too many humans. If the 4 Downlords hadn't joined forces in the end and made a prompt decision to activate the powerful formation hidden within the camp, the entire Starry Sky Pagoda and the camp would have been destroyed by the surprise attack. The 4 headmasters were the representatives of the 4 interstellar camps in the astral battlefield. They were very powerful, surpassing the leaders of most Tao palaces and reaching the mid-level of Taoist master. Among them was the Eastern Tao Lord, Tan Xinghua. When Zhuan had first entered the Eastern Cosmic Camp, he had heard about him from Ghost Plume and knew that he was an extremely powerful and terrifying existence. Tan Xinghua was a middle-aged scholar with a pale face and no beard. His gaze was very serious as he looked at the black mass of outsiders in the void outside. Then, his gaze landed on the 3 people beside him, and he said, "Brother Liu, Brother Yao, Brother Mei, the top 10 races of the primitive heavenly realm have all moved out. They are determined to get the Starry Sky Pagoda. Even though the Starry Sky campsite's formations are impregnable, I'm not sure if these formations will be able to withstand the attacks of these foreign races." The Western Taoist master, L.V. Yelyong, was an old man with a solemn expression. His aged voice slowly rang out as he solemnly said, "As long as we defend the Starry Sky Tower to the death, even if the 10 major races join forces to attack, it is unlikely that they will be able to break through." That's right. Brother Liu is right. The Starry Sky Tower is surrounded by a sky-piercer formation. This was set up by Taoist 3 purities in the past and requires us to work together to maintain it. As long as we don't go out and fight, we will be able to defend the Starry Sky Tower. The Northern Taoist master, Yao Jinyuan, agreed. The Southern Taoist master, Mei Zian, suddenly spoke up. "I heard that the corpse of ancestral Shaman Gonggong has appeared at the Door of Darkness. Many of our human race's experts and young geniuses have gone there. Moreover, most of the geniuses on the Starry Sky contribution ranking have gone to the Door of Darkness. Now that the outsiders are pressuring us, are we just going to ignore the geniuses who have gone to the Door of Darkness?" The moment the Southern Taoist master, Mei Zian, said this, the other three Taoists fell silent. They all subconsciously looked at the Starry Sky contribution ranking not too far away. Earlier, they had already seen that many names on the Starry Sky contribution ranking had dimmed significantly. They all knew that the owners of those dimmed names had most likely perished in the Door of Darkness. These geniuses on the Starry Sky contribution ranking were the most elite of the younger generation in the Xianmi heavenly region. They were the most promising geniuses who would become the master of heaven ascension in the future. To put it bluntly, these geniuses on the Starry Sky contribution ranking were the future hope of the Xianmi heavenly region. This was especially so for the top 10 geniuses on the Starry Sky contribution ranking. Each and every one of them was outstanding and would definitely reach the heights of the master of heaven ascension. These geniuses were currently at the Door of Darkness. Now that the outsiders were blocking their path, wouldn't the humans who had gone to the Door of Darkness be doomed if they came out? Sigh. I have already informed many of our friends who are on the Starry Sky contribution ranking in the Starry Sky camp about the current situation. I want those cultivators who have gone to the Door of Darkness to hide as much as possible and not return to the Starry Sky camp. The Easter Taoist master, Tan Xinghua, said helplessly. The other three Taoists looked at each other and nodded helplessly. This was the only solution they had at the moment. The Starry Sky camp was already in a state of panic. With the enemy before them, they couldn't possibly open the Starry Sky Tower's array formation for the people who had gone to the Door of Darkness. Suddenly, an uproar from the cultivators below the Starry Sky Tower attracted the attention of the four Taoists. All the cultivators retracted their gazes from the outsiders in the Starry Sky Tower, and surprisingly, all of them looked at the Starry Sky contribution ranking in the plaza in front of the Starry Sky Tower. What's going on? Tan Xinghua was a little puzzled as he looked at the crowd that was in an uproar. Now that the enemy was right in front of them, what else could cause such a huge commotion? This made Tan Xinghua puzzled. Therefore, Tan Xinghua retracted his gaze from the Starry Sky contribution ranking and looked at it again. In an instant, his body froze as he stared blankly at the first place on the ranking. The first place on the ranking should have belonged to Zhongli Haoyan, but Zhongli Haoyan had become the second place. The first place was a very unfamiliar name. He had never even heard of the name Long One. Long One? I have never heard of this name among the younger generation. Could it be that this person isn't a disciple of a Tao Palace? Tan Xinghua muttered to himself as his gaze landed on the points behind Long Wen's name. Instantly, his body shook as if he had been struck by lightning. This was because the points behind Long Wen's name was actually 1,053,000 points, which was a total of 800,000 points more than Zhongli Haoyan, who was in second place. Chapter 3056. The combination of sheep and tongue. His points have reached over 1 million. Longwen was ranked in the 30s before this. It hasn't been long, and he's already in first place with over 1 million points. Don't tell me that this guy killed a heaven-span outsider in the blink of an eye. Western sect master LV Yelyong's eyes shone with disbelief. The speed at which his point soared was too strange and abnormal. It's possible that Long Wen really did kill a master of heaven-level alien race. Otherwise, it's impossible for him to have 1 million points. I'm just wondering how he did it. Southern sect master Mei Zian narrowed his eyes and said in a shocked tone, "This Long Wen might be an even more terrifying monster than Zhong Li and Hao Yan. If such a monster can continue to develop, his future will be limitless. We have to find this Long Wen. Let's make an announcement and ask if anyone in the space camp recognizes this Long Wen." Northern sect master Yao Jianyuan was more impatient. He immediately took out his communication jade talisman and sent a message about Long Wen to all the cultivators in the space camp. After all, he was the sect master of the space camp, and his communication jade talisman had great authority. Any cultivator in the space camp could receive the messages sent by the sect master. However, What disappointed Northern Sect Master Yao Jinyuan was that most of the messages sent by the cultivators did not recognize this cultivator called Long One. This Long One is really mysterious. No one in the space camp knows him. Eastern Sect Master Tan Xinghua said, "There's another possibility. This Long One is a fake name. He might not want others to know his real name." Western Sect Master LV Yelyong said, "This kid's points soared not long ago. I'm afraid he's part of the group that entered the Door of Darkness. I hope he's lucky and doesn't die so easily. A genius like him is hard to come by." Northern Sect Master Yao Jinyuan sighed. Although the four sect masters were very curious about Long One and couldn't wait to meet him, they knew that they couldn't go out and look for him with the alien race army in front of them. They only hoped that this junior called Long One could survive the great calamity this time. When Long One's points soared to more than 1 million, it caused an uproar among countless cultivators in the Starry Sky Tower. In the void outside the Starry Sky Tower, the foreign race army was ready to make a move. At the very front of the outsider army, more than 10 powerful figures floated in the air. These dozen or so figures looked like humans from afar, but upon closer inspection, they were quite different from humans. Like a dark cloud, the outsider army stood orderly behind these 10 or so figures. Apparently, these 10 or so figures held high positions in the outsider army. Among these dozen or so figures, the most eye-catching one should be the one standing at the very front. This figure is 30 feet tall. His skin was bright red, and his muscles were bulging. His appearance was very similar to that of a human, but there were scarlet bloodstains on his face. These bloodstains were like veins that expanded on his face, making him look very ferocious and terrifying. I didn't expect the sorcerer tribe to send the famous war god of the sorcerer tribe, the sheep-tongue combination. Standing beside the 10-meter-tall giant was a charming woman. There was a fiery red phoenix mark between her eyebrows, and as she walked, the shadow of a fiery feather flashed behind her back. It was as if she could ascend to immortality at any moment. Mu Yu, the great elder of the Phoenix people, is of noble status. Didn't you come with us? Moreover, I also heard that the second elder of the Phoenix tribe has also come. However, he has gone to the Door of Darkness. The goat-tongue combination of the sorcerer tribe glanced at the charming woman and spoke in a neutral tone. The great elder of the Phoenix people, Mu Yu, glanced at the sheep-tongue combination of the sheep-tongue combination and said with a faint smile, "I heard that there are clues about the corpse of ancestor sorcerer Gong Gong at the Door of Darkness, so I sent second great elder to check it out. But the sorcerer tribe doesn't seem to be interested in ancestor sorcerer Gong Gong at all. You didn't even send anyone to check it out." The sheep-tongue combination of the sorcerer tribe said indifferently. The sorcerer tribe's priests predicted that the corpse of ancestor sorcerer would only appear in the eldritch heavenly realm. It would not appear anywhere else. The 3 ancestral magi corpses that our sorcerer clan obtained were found in the untainted heavenly realm. Mu Yu shrugged her shoulders. In the shaman tribe, priests had a very high status and had the ability to predict the future. Most of the shaman tribe members believed in the priest's prophecies. If your priests really said so, then perhaps the news of the corpse of ancestral, which Gong Gong in the Door of Darkness, is false. Looks like Elder Hong and Bailing made a wasted trip. Mu Yu frowned slightly and spoke in a slightly helpless tone. Bailing should be the new saintess chosen by the Phoenix people, right? I heard that she has the 99 Phoenix body, and her name has spread across the entire primitive heavenly realm in just over 10 years. Even our Wu Xing Yuan is interested in the saintess of your Phoenix people. The Yang-Tongue combination glanced at Mu Yu and said, "Hee, Bailing is just lucky. Brother Yang-Tongue, you flatter me." Although Mu Yu spoke modestly, her eyes were filled with pride and arrogance. It was obvious that she was very satisfied with the new saintess of the Phoenix people. The Yang-Tongue combination smiled and said indifferently, "Hee, if there's a chance, I really want to meet the saintess of your Phoenix people." After the matter at the Door of Darkness is over, when Elder Hong and Bailing return, you can go and meet her. Mu Yu smiled. Then I'm looking forward to it. The Yang-Tung combination smiled. Immediately after, he saw Muyu take out the communication jade talisman from her waist. After checking the message, her expression changed drastically. The Yang-Tung combination saw the change in Muyu's expression and asked in surprise, "Great Clan Elder, what happened?" Muyu put away the communication jade talisman. Although she forced herself to calm down, the Yang-Tung combination could still see the unconcealable anxiety in Muyu's beautiful eyes. It's a message from Elder Hong. Almost all the foreign races that went to the Door of Darkness were wiped out, and the leader of the Merfolk race, Su Long, has fallen. Muyu's beautiful eyes flickered as she said softly, "What? Su Long has fallen?" The Yang-Tung combination's pupils constricted, and he revealed an expression of disbelief. Su Long was the leader of the Merfolk race and an early-stage Heaven Ascension Lord expert. The Yang-Tung combination naturally knew him. However, he found it hard to believe that an early-stage Heaven Ascension Lord expert like Su Long had actually fallen. After all, Heaven Ascension Lord experts were already extremely powerful, and it was very difficult for them to fall. If one wanted to kill an early-stage Heaven Ascension Lord expert like Su Long, one would at least need to be at the mid-stage Heaven Ascension Lord cultivation. Moreover, one would have to pay a huge price to accomplish it. In the human race, besides experts at the level of the 4 Dao Masters and above, who else could kill Su Long? The Yang-Tung combination also knew that the 4 Dao Masters were currently in the camp, so it was naturally impossible for them to appear at the Door of Darkness. Chapter 3057. General Attack. Yes, Elder Hong wouldn't lie. Su Long has indeed fallen. It's said that the one who killed Su Long is a human cultivator called Long One. That human cultivator's cultivation isn't high, and he obtained the inheritance of ancestor Shaman Gongong in the Door of Darkness. At this point, Twilight Rain hesitated, not knowing what to say. What? Ancestor Shaman Gongong's corpse is really in the Door of Darkness? The Yang-Tunged ensemble's pupil shrank, and he continued to ask, "What's the cultivation of that human called Long One?" He actually obtained the inheritance of Ancestor Shaman. Unbelievable. It's said that he's only an eternal lord. Muyu smiled bitterly and helplessly. She even suspected that the information sent by Elder Hong was fake. However, she knew Elder Hong very well. She knew that Elder Hong wasn't someone who liked to joke. He was always meticulous in his work and would never lie. However, she was still shocked by the news, so much so that she couldn't help but doubt its authenticity. The Yang-Tung ensemble was also stunned. He looked at Muyu strangely and didn't say anything. Muyu could see that the Yang-Tung ensemble didn't believe her. No matter how heaven-defying an eternal lord was, he was still an ant-like existence in front of a master of heaven-piercing. How could he possibly kill an early master of heaven-piercing? This news sounded like nonsense. Brother Yang-Tung, I might have to leave for a while. Muyu continued. What's wrong? Great Elder, are you planning to avenge Su Long and go to the Door of Darkness to find Long One? The Yang-Tung ensemble shook his head and smiled. That's not it. It's just that Long One captured the Saintess of the Phoenix people. He's extremely daring. I need to confirm it. Muyu said, with Elder Hong here, I think it's unnecessary for you to go there. Moreover, it's a critical moment in the war between us and the human race. You can't leave at will. The Yang-Tung ensemble whispered. Muyu frowned. She actually wanted to leave, but the Yang-Tung ensemble had a very high status in the Shaman tribe and even the entire primitive heaven realm. Moreover, he was representing the Shaman tribe this time. Muyu did not want to offend the Shaman tribe and the Yang-Tung union. After weighing the pros and cons, she decided to stay. She was very clear about Old Hong's strength. He was much stronger than Su Long. In the message sent by Old Hong, she also knew that Long One had killed Su Long because the human clan's heaven-piercing master had risked his life to pin down Long One. Right now, that Long One was exhausted from running for his life. With Elder Hong's strength, this Long One was naturally easily captured. The Starry Sky Tower is surrounded by a heaven-piercing formation left behind by the human race tens of thousands of years ago. Our foreign race is not good at formations. I'm afraid it won't be that easy to attack the Starry Sky Tower. Muyu frowned as she looked at the Starry Sky Tower that was shrouded in a barrier formed by countless streams of light. We can only attack now. After so many years, the priests of the Voodoo tribe have a rough understanding of the restrictive formations of the Starry Sky Tower. He also pointed out some of the weak points of this formation. As long as we attack these weak points together, the Starry Sky Tower's restrictive formations shouldn't be able to hold on for too long. As the Yang-Tung Union spoke, he took out a formation diagram and handed it to Muyu. Make more than 10 copies and give them to the leaders of the various tribes. Then, I will distribute the places that we need to attack. This time, we must take down the human clan's Starry Sky Tower. Muyu took the formation diagram and looked at the dozen or so marks on the diagram. She knew that these should be the dozen or so weak points of the Starry Sky Tower's formation. Muyu followed the Yang-Tung Union's instructions and made more than 10 copies. After distributing them to the leaders of the various tribes, she returned to the Yang-Tung Union's side. Brother Yang-Tung, everything has been arranged. We are just waiting for your orders. Muyu said. The Yang-Tung Union nodded and then transmitted his voice to the leaders of the various tribes behind him. Everyone has seen the formation diagram, right? Now, I will announce the corresponding weak points that you will be responsible for. The Shaman tribe will be in charge of the first place. The Phoenix people will be in charge of the second place. The Dragon clan will be in charge of the third place. The Space-Time Beast clan will be in charge of the 15th place. Now, everyone, let's attack together. Take down the Starry Sky Tower, and all the resources of the human race will be up to you. Let these ants of the human race see the strength of our foreign race. After the Yang-Tung Union finished speaking, he led the Shaman tribe's troops and charged towards the Starry Sky Tower. Then, the Phoenix people, the Dragon clan, and all the foreign races that came here followed. The black mass of the foreign race army was like a black cloud pressing down from the sky. It was a spectacular and terrifying sight. Oh no! The foreign races have launched an all-out attack. The four Dao Masters floated above the Starry Sky Tower. Their gazes were solemn as they began to use their communication jade talismans to send voice transmissions to all the cultivators in the Starry Sky Tower. They asked them to return to their positions and maintain the powerful heaven-piercing formation on the Starry Sky Tower. Even if this heaven-piercing formation didn't need cultivators to maintain it, it could still operate. However, its defensive power would be weaker. However, if there were countless cultivators maintaining it with their heaven path energy, it was equivalent to obtaining additional energy out of thin air. Naturally, the formation would be much stronger than usual. Even the brilliance on the surface of the formation would be much more intense. Bang, bang, bang. In the instant that the formation became brighter, countless foreign races' troops had already crashed onto the surface of the formation. Dense energy ripples appeared on the surface of the formation, as if a stone had fallen onto the surface of the water. The entire formation shook violently, as if it was about to collapse at any moment. Damn it! These foreign races actually know the weak points of the formation. Didn't they say that the foreign races aren't good at formations? The Eastern Dao Master, Tan Xinghua, immediately noticed that the foreign races were attacking the weak points of the formation. His expression didn't look too good. Not all the foreign races aren't good at formations. It said that the priests of the Shaman tribe are naturally good at formations and alchemy. Although they might not be as good as the top divine formation masters and alchemists of the human race, they aren't too bad either. At the very least, they can find the weak points of the formation. The Western Dao Master, LV Yelyong, shrugged and continued. You should be thankful that the foreign races didn't find the foundation of the formation. Otherwise, the formation would have been destroyed. We can't let this go on. If we let the foreign races continue attacking the weak points of the formation, the Starry Sky Pagoda's formation won't be able to hold on for too long. We have to take the initiative to attack. The Southern Tao Master, Mei Zian, said, I agree with Brother Mei's point of view. We have to take the initiative to attack and share some of the pressure from the formation. The Northern Tao Master, Yao Jinyuan, agreed. All right, the four of us will each lead a team to battle. However, remember, don't stray too far from the formation. We can use the advantage of the formation to slowly wear down the foreign races. The Eastern Tao Master, Tan Xinghua, nodded. Next, the four Tao Lords gathered close to 10,000 cultivators from their respective camps, and they flew out from their respective camps to meet the nearest foreign invaders. Chapter 3058. The pursuit of the two elders. The attack of the four Tao Lords immediately disrupted the attack of the foreign races, and many of them died at the hands of the four Tao Lords. You guys continue to attack the formation here. I'll go and meet the four Tao Lords. The Yang-tongued Union, who was commanding the sorcerer tribe to attack the formation, could no longer sit still when he saw that the four Tao Lords had all moved out. He leaped up and shot towards the Eastern Tao Lord, Tan Xinghua. Bang! Tan Xinghua shook the meteor whip in his right hand, and the whip was like a nimble snake as it destroyed several foreign races that were rushing towards him. Tan Xinghua was about to attack the other foreign races when his expression changed slightly. He swung the whip towards the left, and electric sparks flickered on the surface of the whip, making it look exceptionally gorgeous and dazzling. Rumble! A powerful force came crashing down and actually blasted the whip away. Tan Xinghua couldn't help but retreat. Only then did he realize that the one who had attacked him was a 30 feet tall giant with many bloody scars on his face. He was naturally familiar with this giant. He was the leader of the sorcerer tribe, the Yang-tongued Union, and was also a famous war god in the sorcerer tribe. His cultivation was the same as Tan Xinghua's, and he was also at the middle stage of the sky-reaching master realm. Tan Xinghua, is it fun to bully some juniors? I'll meet you with the Yang-tongued Union. The Yang-tongued Union had an indifferent look in his eyes. He held a giant axe in his hand, and with a stomp of his right foot, the giant axe blasted towards Tan Xinghua at lightning speed. Tan Xinghua's expression changed slightly. The Yang-tongued Union gave him a lot of pressure, and he was definitely not an ordinary expert at the middle stage of the sky-reaching master realm. Tan Xinghua had to be careful when dealing with him. Tan Xinghua swung his right hand, and countless bolts of lightning flashed on the surface of the whip. In the blink of an eye, it blasted towards the giant axe of the Yang-tongued Union. Bang! 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 Countless sparks flew as the two collided, and it was as if countless stars had exploded. The terrifying aftershock spread out, and it was so violent and shocking. The humans and foreign races who were fighting nearby were caught off guard and were affected by the aftershock. They didn't even make a sound before they were blasted into a bloody mist, and they couldn't be any more dead. Learning from the mistakes of those dead human beings and non-humankind beings, the other non-humankind beings and non-humankind beings in the area all stayed far away. A battle between two mid-heaven-span lords was not something they could approach unless they were tired of living. The Grand Elder of the Phoenix people, Mu Yu, shot toward the Western Tao Lord, LV Yelyong, and pinned him down. The other two mid-stage Heaven Conduit Masters also charged toward the Northern Tao Lord Yao Jinyuan and the Southern Tao Lord Mei Zian. Soon, they were engaged in a fierce battle. The terrifying shockwaves of the battle spread out around the four camps, forming a terrifying no-man's land. All the humans and foreign races subconsciously distanced themselves from the four battlefields. In a void extremely far away from the celestial battlefield, a stream of light shot out from a space-time tunnel and hid in the nearest abandoned planet. This was a young man with rosy lips and white teeth. In the instant that he concealed himself on the abandoned planet, he immediately pulled out a crimson longbow, and 3 Genesis divine arrows appeared in his right palm. This person was none other than Zhuowen. He had been fleeing for 3 days and 3 nights, and he had used 9 billion-mile talismans. These 9 billion-mile talismans have been obtained by Zhuowen from the spirit rings of the human and non-humankind experts he had killed in the Door of Darkness. One had to admit that the billion-mile talismans were indeed very fast. The second elder of the Phoenix people could not catch up with him at all. But what made Zhuowen helpless was that he could not shake off the second elder of the Phoenix people either. After all, the second elder was an expert of the Phoenix people and possessed the Phoenix bloodline. Phoenixes were known for their speed, so the speed of the second elder gave Zhuowen a headache. Otherwise, he would not have been unable to shake off the old man, even after using 9 billion-mile talismans. Zhuowen knew that since he could not shake off the old man, the only way was to seriously injure or kill him. Zhuowen also knew that the old man was very powerful. Even if he exposed his trump card, it would still be very difficult to kill the second elder of the Phoenix people. However, if he could seriously injure the old man, Zhuowen would have a chance to shake him off. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Zhuowen pulled the bowstring to a full moon and immediately released it. The sound of the bowstring piercing through the air like thunder rang out, and the 3 arrows turned into 3 crimson lights that streaked across the void and swept toward the void in front of the abandoned planet. Far away, a fiery red stream of light could be seen rushing toward them. Upon closer inspection, it was an old man whose entire body was surrounded by flames. This old man was the second elder of the Phoenix people. At this moment, the second elder of the Phoenix people stared coldly at the abandoned planet in front of him. His divine sense had already locked onto Zhuowen, so he already knew the moment Zhuowen hid on the abandoned planet. Just as the second elder of the Phoenix people was about to rush toward the abandoned planet to find Zhuowen hiding on the planet, he sensed 3 terrifying auras rushing toward him. Immediately, the second elder of the Phoenix people discovered that 3 divine arrows with terrifying killing intent had turned into 3 directions and were converging toward him at an extremely fast speed. Humph! Insignificant tricks. The second elder of the Phoenix clan coldly snorted. He waved his sleeves, and the flames around him turned into 3 huge fire phoenixes. They suddenly rushed out and charged toward the 3 divine arrows that were flying toward them. Bang! Bang! However, to the surprise of the second elder of the Phoenix people, the 3 fire phoenixes that he had conjured were pierced by the 3 divine arrows and shattered into countless sparks. Immediately after, the 3 divine arrows pierced through the air and came toward him. The second elder of the Phoenix people didn't panic. Instead, he took a few steps back, kicked his right foot, and moved his body to the side. The first arrow brushed past his waist. At this moment, the second elder of the Phoenix people used his right hand as a knife and slashed down, cutting the divine arrow into 2. The second elder of the Phoenix people's body movement technique was very impressive. Under the attack of the 3 divine arrows, he dodged them with ease and used the gaps in his dodging to destroy all 3 divine arrows. After destroying the 3 divine arrows, the second elder of the Phoenix people refocused his attention on the abandoned planet in front of him. He said coldly, "Human, you can't escape." On the abandoned planet, Zhuowen's face darkened when he saw the second elder of the Phoenix people easily destroy the 3 divine arrows. He sighed softly and took out the bloodstained horn. He knew that if he wanted to hurt the second elder of the Phoenix people, ordinary creation-level divine arrows wouldn't be able to do it. He could only use Ho Yi's divine arrows. When Zhuowen pulled the string of Ho Yi's divine arrows to a full moon, a terrifying killing intent soared into the sky. Chapter 3059. Oriole behind the pupils of the Phoenix people's second elder shrank as he immediately sensed an even more terrifying killing intent. It wasn't the first time he had sensed such a killing intent. Back then, when Su Long died on that bloodstained horn, it also carried this tyrannical and terrifying killing intent. Whoosh! A thunderous roar was heard, and the Phoenix people's second elder immediately saw the true face of that killing intent. A blood-stained horn shot out from the abandoned planet, advancing courageously and fearlessly, like a god of death descending. It really is the divine arrow that killed Su Long. The Phoenix People's second elder's gaze turned serious. He stopped in place and flicked his finger, taking out a fan made of fire plume. The second elder formed a seal with his right hand and pointed at the fan. Countless fiery red runes appeared on the surface of the fan, emitting a blazing flame. The second elder abruptly fanned his fan forward, and a gust of hot wind swept over. This hot wind wasn't invisible, but was formed by flames of various colors. These flames were like angry dragons, and they were extremely fast as they shot toward the blood arrow. In an instant, the blood arrow was enveloped by the flames, forming a flame barrier. However, although the flame barrier looked very sturdy and terrifying, it collapsed under the bombardment of the blood arrow. The second elder's gaze was very serious. After the flame barrier was destroyed, the fan in his hand danced, and he attacked with lightning speed. Bang! 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 In just an instant, the fan and the blood arrow collided no less than 100 times. Every collision caused sparks to fly, and the killing intent was awe-inspiring. The second elder took a step back with every collision, and his expression became more unsightly. The terror of the blood arrow was somewhat beyond his expectations. Damn it, this second elder of the Phoenix people is too strong. Even Ho Yi's divine arrow can't do anything to him. On the abandoned planet, Zhuan's gaze was gloomy. Although it seemed like the second elder was at a disadvantage now, he knew that with the second elder's continuous bombardment, Ho Yi's divine arrow's momentum was constantly weakening, and the killing intent on the arrow was also constantly dissipating. Zhuan knew that within 100 hits, Ho Yi's divine arrow would be completely suppressed by the second elder. When that time came, it would be Zhuan's time to die. I must take advantage of this opportunity to escape. Zhuan's eyes flashed. He bit his lips, took out the space-time roulette, and escaped into the space-time tunnel, and instantly disappeared. Zhuan made this decision. It was somewhat difficult. The Ho Yi Divine Arrow was an extremely powerful trump card of Zhuan. Now that he was fleeing, it meant that he had given up on the Ho Yi Divine Arrow. But Zhuan, Ho Yi's Divine Arrow's arrow, at most, injuring the Phoenix people. But if Zhuan didn't escape now, was the second time with Zhuan? The Phoenix People force was Zhuan's studio art. Studio Zhuan Lu Studio was Studio Lu Studio. The second elder, who was tangling with Ho Yi's divine arrow, naturally noticed Zhuan's escape, and his eyes revealed a look of anxiety. However, Ho Yi's divine arrow's killing intent was too terrifying. He couldn't completely suppress it now, and could only wait a little longer. Damn it! The second elder's eyes turned crimson red. He kept on waving his fan, causing endless flames to swirl in the air. It was a horrifying sight. Under the second elder's crazy bombardment, Ho Yi's divine arrow finally stopped. The terrifying killing intent on the surface of the arrow was also dissipated by the flames of the fan. The second elder grabbed Ho Yi's divine arrow in his hand. He didn't even have time to look at the terrifying arrow. After putting it into his spirit ring, he chased after Zhuan. Not long after, the second elder returned to the abandoned planet, and his face turned green. Just now, he chased with all his might, but he couldn't find any trace of Zhuan. To put it simply, he lost track of him. Zhuan kept running. In the space-time tunnel, he kept switching between the tunnel and the speed. In order to not leave any traces, Zhuan carefully chose the places where he entered and exited the space-time tunnel. No one could tell which space-time tunnel he entered and exited. Although Zhuan couldn't sense the second elder of the Phoenix People's aura at all, he still didn't let down his guard. Instead, he continued to fly for 3 days and 3 nights. Finally, he left the dark ancient city and stopped in a remote crevice between meteorites. Bang! However, The moment Zhuo Wengang entered the gap between the meteors suddenly exploded. Invisible ripples of explosion spread out like endless waves. Thump! Thump! The moment the meteorite exploded, Zhuo felt that something was wrong. He immediately rushed out of the crevice. However, he was still hit by the aftermath of the explosion. His face was slightly pale. His chest, left hand, and left leg were directly blown apart, and his flesh was badly mutilated. If it weren't for his powerful Panga's sacred body, Zhuowen's injuries would have been more serious. Although Zhuowen's current strong recovery ability could heal these injuries quickly, he didn't. This recovery ability was his trump card, and he didn't want to expose it easily. Moreover, with his injuries so serious, the person who was secretly playing tricks behind him should also appear. He wanted to see who was playing tricks on him. He had already ruled out the possibility of the second elder of the Phoenix people. With the second elder's powerful strength, he really didn't want to play tricks on him. Huh. Zhuowen, let's see if you can still escape this time. A cold voice came. Two figures rushed out from behind a medium-sized meteorite in the distance. The moment Zhuowen saw the two people, his eyes narrowed slightly. However, they quickly returned to normal. He said doubtfully, "So it's sect leader Sun and Elder Gao of the 10 Extremes Yin Corps sect. May I know why the two of you are looking for me? And the meteorite explosion just now was caused by the two of you? We are all humans. Why did you do that?" Zhuowen's tone was slightly resentful. The one who spoke was Gao Yanghong. He was standing beside Senki Yin, looking at Zhuowen with a gloomy gaze. He continued, "Zhuowen, I already knew who you are. You don't have to pretend anymore. I'll remember the divine arrow you used, even if I turn into ashes." Gao Yanghong's eyes were full of mockery as he looked at Zhuowen from head to toe. "You already recognized me when we were at the Door of Darkness?" Zhuowen frowned. Gao Yanghong grinned, but didn't say anything. He looked at Zhuowen condescendingly, as if he was looking at a dead man. "But you're really quite powerful. You actually escaped from the hands of the second elder of the Phoenix people. You really surprised me." Senki Yin looked at Zhuowen and said sarcastically. Zhuowen could see the extremely dense killing intent in Senki Yin's eyes. Zhuowen's heart sank. Gao Yanghong and Senki Yin were really sinister. They had actually followed him all the way. Senki Yin was, after all, an expert at the early stage of the sky-piercing realm. Naturally, he had powerful concealment techniques to follow him without being discovered. Senki Yin and Gao Yanghong should have also witnessed the battle between him and the second elder of the Phoenix people. It had to be said that Senki Yin was very patient. After Zhuowen had shaken off the second elder of the Phoenix people, he still followed him closely and didn't show himself. Chapter 3060. Ghost Chain kills Senki Yin saw that Zhuowen was silent and thought that Zhuowen was afraid. He smiled faintly and said, "Zhuowen, I won't make things difficult for you. You broke into my 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect and stole my Yama's demon portrait. You also destroyed my underground secret chamber. Now, as long as you return the Yama's demon portrait and join my 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect, I can forget about your past grievances with the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect. I will even focus on nurturing you." Gao Yanghong was shocked. He did not expect Senki Yin to want to recruit Zhuowen. However, when he thought of Zhuowen's heaven-defying strength, he felt that it was reasonable. Among the younger generation of the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect, Ghost Plume was the strongest. However, Ghost Plume was much weaker than Zhuowen. Whether it was in terms of strength or temperament, they could not compare. It was reasonable for the sect leader to want to recruit this person as a disciple. "Zhuowen, the sect leader thinks highly of you. You'd better agree. It's a good thing for both you and me," Gao Yanghong also said. Zhuowen sneered in his heart and said, "Yama's demon portrait? Sect leader's son must be joking. I've never even heard of this thing. Also, I Zhuowen like freedom. I don't like being restrained. I'm not interested in joining the 10 Extremities Yin Corps sect." As soon as he said this, Senki Yin and Gao Yanghong's faces darkened. They looked at Zhuowen with unfriendly expressions. You really don't know what's good for you. Zhuowen, you're already injured to this extent, but you're still so stubborn. It seems like you don't want to live anymore, Gao Yanghong said and looked at Senki Yin as if he was asking for his opinion. Senki Yin nodded and said coldly, Yanghong, don't be too heavy-handed. Don't beat him to death. From Senki Yin's point of view, this Zhuowen's strength was indeed very strange. Back at the Door of Darkness, he was actually able to kill the leader of the merman race, Su Long. However, he knew that the reason this child could kill Su Long was completely because of that Ho-E divine arrow. While he was tailing the kid, he saw with his own eyes that the kid's terrifying Ho-E divine arrow was taken away by the second elder of the Phoenix people. And now, Zhuowen had been injured by their sneak attack, so in Senki Yin's opinion, Zhuowen wasn't much of a threat at all. Moreover, Gao Yanghong was also a half-step master of Heaven Ascension. Although he was not as strong as an early-stage master of Heaven Ascension, it was more than enough to deal with the heavily injured Zhuowen. Gao Yanghong nodded and took a step forward, rushing toward Zhuowen. A sinister smile appeared at the corners of his mouth, and the aura of a half-step master of Heaven Ascension was released without reservation. Zhuowen silently looked at Gao Yanghong, who was getting closer and closer. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Whoosh! You're about to die, but you're still smiling. I really admire your courage. Gao Yanghong couldn't help but feel a little angry when he saw Zhuowen actually smiling. He couldn't help but curse, but his attacks became even more ruthless and merciless. Bang! However, the moment Gao Yanghong's attack landed in front of Zhuowen, he discovered a strange black chi blocking in front of Zhuowen. Behind this strange black chi was a black jade scroll, and the black chi was surging out from this scroll. First layer of the Yama Ghost diagram, open for me. Ghost chain kill. Zhuowen's figure was completely covered by the black chi, and it was impossible to see his face clearly. Only his faint voice rang out, and it was like a wail from the depths of hell, causing one's scalp to go numb. Gao Yanghong felt his scalp go numb. The fame of the Yama's ghost portrait was too great, and he had heard all kinds of shocking legends about it. Therefore, the moment he recognized the Yama ghost diagram, Gao Yanghong turned around and fled. How is this possible? How did this kid master the Yama ghost diagram so quickly? This is impossible. This was the only thought in Gao Yanghong's mind as he fled. Senki Yin looked at this scene in disbelief. This Zhuowen was actually using the Yama ghost diagram to attack Gao Yanghong. This Yama ghost diagram was accidentally obtained by Senki Yin, and it had been sealed in an underground secret chamber for tens of thousands of years. Over the past tens of thousands of years, Sun Qiyin had been constantly trying to refine the Yama demon diagram and master this infamous transcending heaven-grade divine artifact. However, without exception, Senki Yin had failed. Originally, when a Yama ghost diagram was stolen by Zhuowen, Senki Yin was very angry, but he hadn't reached the point of madness. This was because Senki Yin knew that even if Zhuowen obtained the Yama ghost diagram, he wouldn't be able to refine it, let alone know how to use it. But now, the scene that Senki Yin saw was a slap to his face. Speaking of which, Zhuowen's ability to refine the Yama ghost portrait was entirely due to luck. If the Yama Ghost Lord hadn't possessed him, Zhuowen would have found out that the Yama Ghost Lord wasn't the Yama Ghost Portrait Artifact Spirit, but the remnant will of the Yama Ghost Lord. And if Zhuowen had destroyed the remnant will and obtained the Yama Ghost Lord's memories, Zhuowen wouldn't have been able to refine the Yama Ghost Portrait. The reason why Senki Yin hadn't been able to refine the Yama Ghost diagram for tens of thousands of years was mainly because of the Yama Ghost Lord's remnant consciousness. The Yama Ghost Lord was very cunning. He knew that Senki Yin's cultivation was strong, and that his attempt to possess Senki Yin would definitely fail. Therefore, he pretended to be the artifact spirit of the Yama Ghost diagram and misled Senki Yin for tens of thousands of years, causing Senki Yin's efforts to go to waste. Zhuowen's strength was so weak that the Yama Ghost Lord's remnant consciousness was immediately exposed and attacked Zhuowen. If Zhuowen's divine soul wasn't protected by the Panga banner, Zhuowen might have been successfully possessed by the Yama Ghost Lord. In the end, he suppressed the Yama Ghost Lord's remnant consciousness and learned the method to refine the Yama Ghost diagram. There were 3 layers in the Yama Ghost diagram, and each layer contained a terrifying killing move. Zhuan had been studying the Yama Ghost diagram for some time, so he naturally knew the method to open the first layer of the Yama Ghost diagram. The first layer of the Yama Ghost diagram was the Ghost Chain Kill. Inside, there were countless strange ghost chains. Once these ghost chains appeared, they would bind the divine soul of a living being and cause the living being's divine soul to feel endless pain. In the end, the divine soul would be completely strangled by the ghost chains. A total of 9 ghost chains swept out from the black gas and instantly wrapped around Gao Yanghong. The moment the 9 ghost chains wrapped around Gao Yanghong's eyes widened and he let out a shrill scream, as if he was a prisoner who had been subjected to some extremely terrifying torture. Gao Yanghong covered his head and rolled on the ground as if he had gone crazy. Zhuan took advantage of the moment when Gao Yanghong's divine soul was being tortured by the ghost chains and silently appeared in front of Gao Yanghong. His right index and middle fingers formed a sword and suddenly pointed at Gao Yanghong's forehead. A violent energy poured out, and Gao Yanghong's divine soul was completely destroyed. Gao Yanghong's crazy actions came to an abrupt end. Pucci. Chapter 3061. A battle between Soljuan's face was pale, and his forehead was covered in sweat. There were even bloodstains at the corner of his mouth. This Yamago's portrait is really a dangerous divine weapon. My soul actually has to endure such pain when I use the ghost chain strike. Zhuan muttered to himself as he looked at the Yama ghost portrait floating beside him. His eyes were filled with fear. This was his first time using the ghost chain strike on the first level of the Yama ghost portrait. Using 9 ghost chains was already his limit. What he did not expect was that his soul would also have to endure the impact of the ghost chain strike the moment he opened the ghost chain strike. Although the impact he had to endure was much weaker than Gao Yanghong's, the pain of his soul being stimulated was like countless golden needles piercing his nerves. That feeling was excruciating. Senki Yin, who was originally calm and composed, was stunned when he saw Gao Yanghong's soul being destroyed in an instant. His face was filled with disbelief. Although Zhuan's strength was indeed terrifying, Zhuan had relied on that strange divine arrow to achieve that. Now that the divine arrow had been taken away by the Phoenix people's second elder, he should not have any more trump cards on him. However, what Senki Yin did not expect was that Zhuan had actually mastered the Yama Ghost portrait. He had had the Yama Ghost portrait for tens of thousands of years. He knew very well that this Yama Ghost portrait was not an ordinary divine weapon, but a top-tier divine weapon. If one could master this Yama Ghost portrait, any cultivator would be like a tiger that had grown wings. However, Senki Yin quickly came back to his senses. He looked greedily at the Yama Ghost portrait in Zhuan's hand. He knew that as long as he could completely take down this person, not only would the Yama Ghost portrait be his, but he would also be able to obtain the method to use the Yama Ghost portrait that he had not mastered for tens of thousands of years. The seed of greed continued to spread in Senki Yin's heart, causing him to almost lose his mind. Zhuan, very good. Today, even if you kneel in front of me and beg for mercy, I will not let you go. I will extract your soul and search it. Once I obtain the method to use the Yama demon diagram, I will place your soul in the divine flame and let you suffer the pain of being burned by the divine flame for eternity. Rumble. Before Senki Yin could finish speaking, he had already shot forward, and the powerful aura of an early master of heaven ascension was revealed. This aura was too terrifying. With Senki Yin as the center, an invisible domain spread out. Within this domain, there was an extremely strong pressure pressing down. Even Zhuan's movements slowed down slightly when he felt this pressure. However, he immediately unleashed his late-stage 6-star Pangu sacred body. The pressure was immediately suppressed by Pangu's aura. At the same time, Zhuowen immediately retreated. "You can't." Senki Yin's cold voice rang out. His speed suddenly increased, and he arrived in front of Zhuowen in an instant. His right hand turned into a claw, and a strange and unfathomable black glow flashed between his fingers. Bang! Senki Yin's speed was extremely fast, and his claw came down. The strange black glow was like the sharpest blade in the world, as if it could cut through anything. Zhuowen threw a punch, but it was pierced by the strange black glow, and it was smashed into a bloody mist. Boom! Zhuowen's entire right arm exploded into a strange cloud of blood mist. The moment Senki Yin's right claw destroyed Zhuowen's right arm, it immediately turned into a fist and smashed hard on Zhuowen's chest. This punch was so powerful that it hit Zhuowen's chest, and it sounded like a drum. Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood, and he was free falling down in a straight line. Senki Yin clearly did not want to give Zhuowen any chance to catch his breath. He pressed down with his knee, and his whole body was like a falling meteor, rapidly falling down. His target was Zhuowen's forehead. If this knee attack landed, Zhuowen's head would probably explode, and his soul might be destroyed. Zhuowen frantically used the power of the Gomang Gu, and the terrifying injuries on his right arm and chest healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, Zhuowen looked at the Yama's ghost portrait floating above his head, and a trace of ruthlessness appeared in his eyes. Ghost Chain Kill. Zhuowen opened the first layer of the Yama's ghost portrait again and released the Ghost Chain Kill. His soul once again felt like countless chains were tangled together, and he felt an unbearable pain. The Yama's ghost portrait emitted endless black fog, and a black gap appeared in the black fog. From the gap, black ghost chains shot out one after another. There were a total of 9 ghost chains, and they were like chains that came out of hell to judge sinners. Senki Yin's expression changed slightly. His feet kicked in the air, and his body changed directions at strange angles, trying to avoid the 9 ghost chains. He had seen with his own eyes that Zhuowen was tortured by the 9 ghost chains to the point where he wished he was dead. That was why Zhuowen's sneak attack succeeded, and his soul was destroyed, and he died. Although he was much stronger than Gao Yanghong, he did not dare to casually come into contact with the 9 ghost chains, and he tried to avoid them as much as possible. Unfortunately, no matter how Senki Yin dodged, the 9 ghost chains seemed to have a mind of their own, and they chased after Senki Yin, and their speed became faster and faster. In the end, with Senki Yin as the center, the 9 ghost chains came from 9 directions at the same time, making it impossible for Senki Yin to dodge. He could only watch as the 9 ghost chains surrounded him. Senki Yin's hands formed a seal, and he took out 9 palm-sized black skeletons from his spirit ring. These 9 black skeletons were surrounded by black chi, and they revolved around Senki Yin and then rushed toward the 9 ghost chains. Unfortunately, the instant these 9 black skeletons came into contact with the ghost chains, it was as though they had met their natural enemy. The dark eyes of the skeletons actually revealed a dark glint of fear. Immediately, their hands and feet became chaotic as they began to flee in panic. The 9 ghost chains were like mighty and invincible divine dragons, and they rushed out, piercing through the 9 black skeletons, and then wrapped Senki Yin tightly. Senki Yin's eyes widened. Chapter 3062. Xiaohei's attack after being nourished by the Panga banner. Zhuowen's divine soul was indeed much stronger than that of many cultivators, but it didn't mean that his divine soul was comparable to that of an early-stage, sky-reaching master like Senki Yin. To be honest, Zhuowen's cultivation base was only that of an eternal overlord. The difference between him and Senki Yin was like the difference between heaven and earth. To be able to restrain an expert like Senki Yin with his divine soul, Zhuowen was already very impressive. It seems that although the Yama Ghost portrait is powerful, it also comes with a heavy price. Senki Yin was wrapped up like a dumpling by the 9 ghost chains. His divine soul was constantly being whipped, and it was extremely painful. Fortunately, he was a sky-reaching master, and his divine soul was much stronger than that of ordinary cultivators. Although it was painful, he could still endure it. However, Senki-in also knew that if this continued, it wouldn't end. So he forcibly separated a wisp of his divine soul and took out a pitch-black divine sword from his spirit ring. There was a bright red blood groove in the center of the divine sword, extending from the hilt to the tip. This divine sword was Senki-in's natal divine weapon, a half-step sky-reaching divine weapon. After being nourished by Senki-in's blood essence for countless years, it was infinitely close to becoming a sky-reaching divine weapon. Puffed. Senki-in suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood essence. The pitch-black divine sword seemed to come to life, turning into a black light that shot toward Zhuowen's glabella. After using the pitch-black divine sword, Senki-in's expression suddenly became much more dispirited, and his face was so pale that he didn't look like a normal person. Because a part of his divine soul had been separated, his divine soul was immediately injured by the silent ghost chains, and he grimaced in pain. Senki-in had paid a heavy price to use this sword, but he didn't regret it. He knew that this sword was enough to kill Zhuowen. As long as he could kill this kid and obtain the Yamagos portrait, everything would be worth it. The pitch-black divine sword was extremely fast, and it arrived in front of Zhuowen in the blink of an eye. It actually ignored the strange black fog emanating from the Yama ghost diagram and directly pierced through it. "Xiaohei, come out!" Zhuowen suddenly bellowed, only to see 3 sword lights flashing around him, exploding above the pitch-black divine sword. Bang, bang, bang. 3 crisp sounds rang out in succession. The 3 beams of sword light were repelled, and the trajectory of the pitch-black sword deviated slightly. It pierced into Zhuowen's left shoulder and destroyed his left hand. Zhuowen smiled bitterly. If it were any other time, he would have been able to dodge. But now his divine soul was restrained by the Yamagos portrait, and he couldn't divert his attention to control his current physical body. In fact, the Yamagos portrait's ghost chain kill was a very abnormal skill. If Zhuowen and Senki-in were both experts at the initial stage of sky-reaching master, and their divine souls weren't so different, he could use the ghost chain kill to easily injure Senki-in and even kill Senki-in. Unfortunately, Zhuowen's divine soul was a little weaker than Senki-in's, so the backlash from the ghost chain kill was even more intense. Now, he couldn't even divert his attention to move. The 3 sword lights were naturally the Thunderfire Sword, Sacrificial Death Sword, and Blood Immortal Sword that had been hidden in the macro world. Ever since Xiaohei had obtained a lot of ores and materials, he had brought the Sacrificial Death Sword and Blood Immortal Sword into seclusion. They had only just come out of seclusion. Xiaohei had gained a lot from the seclusion. The Thunderfire Sword that he controlled had advanced to the peak of the Genesis level, and the Sacrificial Death Sword and Blood Immortal Sword had reached the initial stage of the Genesis level. Holy **T. What kind of divine sword is this? It's so hard. I'm getting dizzy. Xiaohei was sent flying by the pitch-black divine sword. He had just stabilized himself in the void when he started to talk nonsense. "Xiaohei, stop that pitch-black divine sword. My divine soul is restrained by the Yamagos portrait, and I can't control my body. I can only rely on you now." Zhuowen hurriedly sent a voice transmission to Xiaohei and briefly explained everything that had happened. Xiaohei's expression suddenly became much more serious. He looked at Senki-in, who was bound by the 9 ghost chains not far away, and said, "I didn't expect that old man to come personally to kill you. Looks like you've been exposed at the door of darkness. But that pitch-black divine sword is this old man's natal divine weapon. I estimate that it's at least a half step to the immortal ascension level. I'm only at the peak of the Genesis level. You want me to fight that pitch-black divine sword head-on? Aren't you tricking me?" Xiaohei immediately objected. "Don't worry. Senki-in's divine soul is bound by the ghost chains, and it's constantly being weakened. His natal divine sword is also constantly consuming his divine soul. As long as you can stall his natal divine sword, that old man won't be able to hold on for long," Zhuowen said as he endured the pain. Xiao chuckled and said, "So that's how it is. That's easy. But if I can take down that old man, that black divine sword will belong to me. All right, as long as you can stall that black divine sword for me, I'll give it to you." Zhuo nodded. He knew that Xiao possessed extremely powerful forging skills. He could refine other divine weapons and use them to upgrade his own divine weapons. This wasn't the first time that Xiao had done this. In the past, when Zhuo and Xiao had teamed up to kill enemies, this guy would always shamelessly take away all the high-grade divine weapons and refine them to upgrade himself. That divine sword is coming again. Hurry up and help me block it. The sound of something hurtling through the air suddenly rang out. Zhuo's expression changed slightly. He saw that the pitch-black divine sword had immediately turned around under Senki Yin's divine sense after it had veered off course. It continued to stab toward Zhuo's vitals. Bang! 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 Xiao responded. He took the sacrificial death sword and blood immortal sword and turned into 3 rays of sword light. They formed a 3-way encirclement and entangled with the pitch-black divine sword. Within the 9 ghost chains, Senki Yin was shocked. He glanced at Zhuo, who was sitting cross-legged. This guy's divine soul should have reached its limit.